Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Pro Wrestling World Talks with Dan and Mac.
Hey, Scott.
Hey, Scott.
Hey, guys.
Hey, it's nice to. It's David, one who's been texting you
What's
about
happening?
this. Not much. Sorry.
You should have led with,
Yeah,
that fucking guy.
Yeah.
That motherfucker. Him again. I'm out.
This guy.
Go to the beach.
It's good to know Scott dropped the F-bomb already, so that way it's just like, okay, that works. That works for me.
Yeah, what's the part?
Wait a
It's
minute.
like, because the first...
You're talking to somebody that worked with Scott Hall and Diamond Dallas Page.
Yeah, he's gonna
That's
cuss.
true.
The best I'll ever hope for is a distant third in use of the F-bomb.
Well, this group, yeah, it'll probably be a distant third, considering, even though the first,
Hey, fuck you. What are you trying to fucking say?
Well, I don't know what the, shut the fuck up, all right?
Wow.
Holy fucking shit!
It's like 1999 all over again.
Oh, man.
Ready for Staircase 99?
I'm all for it. I think that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, I was texting him about our show idea, but the damn text message autocorrected Starrcade to Staircase.
Staircase.
That is wonderful, though.
Staircase
I mean,
98.
This is
Staircase
2024. You know, there's nothing new under the sun. Everything's been done. Everything. So you got to come up with something that's like Dusty when he did the War Games, the match Beyond in 86 and 87. That had never been done. You know, something different, like Hell in a Cell, something. You know, oh my
That's
God,
a
it's a
staircase.
Russian chain match. Stop the presses.
I think the only Russian chain match is the Russian chain gang match, but
That would have been
in the
interesting.
gulag.
Okay, we're done here. I'll talk to you guys next time.
That's peak comedy. We're good.
Yeah.
Hey, at least we're getting those keynotes early.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, we've peaked 4 minutes before broadcast. That's
Awesome.
That's exactly.
I think this just stays in, honestly.
that's always the goal.
Yes.
Peak before the red light goes on, and it's downhill from there.
So, of course, tonight we are. This is welcome to PWW Talks, everybody. A special roundtable edition, as we have myself, Neil Burke, and Mac, of course, always my co-host. Our super producer Dave has joined us, and the guest of honor, the man, the myth, the legend, coming back just very shortly after his first appearance here, former WCW announcer, and of course, for his time on ESPN in the early 90s, the heartthrob himself, Scott Hudson.
I thought you were talking about Disco Inferno.
Well,
Slide out and call him. I mean, he's about an hour up the road, but see if we can get him up here.
I've always thought that WCW would have turned things around if they put the championship on Disco Inferno. If they just gave him...
Here's
Yes.
the thing. Disco Glenn Gilberti, and Steve Prazak, other than my wife, my best friend in the world, we all started together with Buff Bagwell and all of those guys back in 89 and 90 in Georgia. So I've known Glenn for like 35 years, and I adore the guy. And I never have ever understood the heat that guy gets from people that know the business. You know, he was just he was in incredible shape. He could really work. He could cut a promo. He made you hate him.
The disco thing was over.
And he was so
was.
good. People that call themselves that call themselves smart to the business hated him. And I'm like, if you can make those guys hate you, you're better than almost everybody else. And I never understood the heat that guy got. I thought he was an amazing talent. I don't know. We should have put the strap on him and ran with him at the top, but
he was the best WCW TV champion you guys ever had.
He did have a.
He was a damn good
cruiserweight run.
champion. Him and
Did he
Alex
have a pretty
Wright.
solid cruiserweight run too.
Yeah.
With
true.
Yeah, he had a cruiserweight run. He had something where he wrestled Medusa, didn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw it last year. I don't
And
remember.
Jacqueline, I think
actually
he
on the
wrestled
cock.
Jacqueline a couple of times.
Jacqueline. Yeah. Jesus
She
Christ.
is, people forget about her WCW, but she did some crazy shit in that company.
I'm going to tell you, Jackie Moore is one of my all-time favorites. She's nuts. I mean, not nuts like mentally. She'll go out there and she'll kick your ass. She's one of those that
I firmly believe it.
Like I may lose the match, I may lose the shoot fight, but you're going to get hurt. I mean, I love Jackie Moore. I think she's wonderful.
She's known for WWE, but I remember they had this match with Kevin Sullivan versus Chris Benoit, and it was just Kevin Sullivan and Chris Benoit on paper. But Miss Jackie, and I forget who the other girl was, beat the absolute holy shit out of each other in that match. It was Nancy.
Yeah,
yes.
it was Nancy.
Right.
It was Super
It
Bowl
was
7,
great. They just beat the absolute hell out of
Was that the one where Kevin and Chris went into the women's bathroom in Baltimore?
Yeah.
That was Great American Bash 96. I believe the
96.
match. I think the match that Dave is talking about is from Super Bowl 97 in San Francisco.
They had so many matches where they just beat the hell out of each other. But this is the one where the women got involved.
Yeah. Yeah, I firmly believe it's
not
the Super Bowl 7.
God bless Nancy and God rest her soul. She was incredible, but she was not a tough person at all. She was exactly what you thought. She was obviously beautiful. She was nice. She was easy to work with, a complete pro. But I'm telling you, Jackie could do like Ultimate Fight. Not now because she's older than I am, but she's tough. She's insanely tough. I wouldn't mind seeing her have another run. I guess. I mean, she's a beautiful woman. She's in fantastic shape, always has been, but she's crazy tough. I wouldn't mind seeing her get another run, like one of those legends run in WWE.
Certainly deserves to have something,
Yeah.
She should, at the very least, they should give her a really good setup for the Hall of Fame and not just be like an actor.
There you go.
Like they do with some of them.
I'd be fine with that. They should induct a female into the Hall of Fame and have her come out and beat the shit out of them on stage. Maybe
maybe Sable. Have her beat up Sable.
Oh, please, God, yes.
You guys are gonna get F5. Better be careful.
Oh,
Come on, guys. Come on.
Money in the bank.
He's just going to. He comes to
people.
He'll do house calls, I swear. Like, I'm afraid he's just going to show up to people's houses soon.
Who's that?
Brock Lesnar.
Brock.
No, God. No. She doesn't think it's no. God's sakes, man.
That's what Mero said. That's how he learned forgiveness.
No one saw those photos, right? No one saw those photos this week at all. No one saw those. No. We didn't see anything this week.
Fairness,
at all.
I hate Sable, but I gave her the benefit of the doubt on that one. People get old.
Yeah.
You can say what you want about Mark. He's a great guy, but he is really, 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 really smart. And when somebody came to him, and I'm just guessing, and said, "Hey, Mark, your wife is banging Brock Lesnar," he probably said, "Well, there's other fish in the sea. I'll check back with you."
Yeah.
Better hit the old dusty trail.
That's right. It's not like, hey, she's banging Billy Kidman. Oh, that bastard.
Yeah.
I'll show him. No offense to Kidman.
Yeah. He had Tori Wilson at one point. I don't think he was going to be like, I don't need
If I could have one conversation with Pete Gruner, Billy Kidman, if I could, I wouldn't talk anything about wrestling. I would say, how in the world did you pull Tori Wilson? How? I mean, she's in the locker room with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall and Flair and everybody else, and Kidman? Oh, and it's like David Flair, a terrific guy. Love David Flair. He pulls Stacy Keibler. Stacy Keibler.
Well, I mean, part of the last name. I mean,
yeah.
Oh my God, man! My name is Scott Hudson. That's that close to being Rock Hudson. I couldn't even get her to walk me to my car.
Damn it.
Wow.
So how about Starrcade '98?
Yeah, let's go into that.
He brought up Kidman. It's a good segue.
It is actually.
Wait a minute now. Before we go on, Mac, are you doing like an anime cosplay Radar O'Reilly on your?
You're not supposed to tell anybody, Scott.
This?
Come on, man. You're not supposed to tell anybody that.
He does kind
I'm
of.
just messing with
I know, you're all good, man. I don't give a shit. It's all good.
We're all friends here,
you. Yeah,
except with Dave.
we've all seen Sable naked, so who cares?
Fuck you, Dan.
You know, that's the thing is we've probably all seen Sable naked more recently than Mark Marrow has.
Well, I mean, it depends if he has those Playboys still. I mean,
I would think Mark Marrow does not have those issues. He's a straight
In
up.
2006, they had the best of the WWE Divas Playboy. I had that one. I had them all in there, except China. I guess they cut her out for some reason.
I wonder
Once
why.
again,
I have no idea.
too much information.
Yeah, things we didn't need to know about.
I mean, I wasn't involved
I
in
think
that
Tori-
situation at all.
It was right after who was the GoDaddy girl?
What?
The GoDaddy girl from WWE.
Danica
Candice
Patrick?
Michelle?
Oh, from WWE.
Candice Michelle?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Candice
It was
Michelle.
right after she did
right.
her thing.
Yeah.
They did the best of WWE women. It was a great magazine.
She was extremely underrated. You gotta bring that up.
She
there.
was actually, she was getting better at the end of her run, but then she went and left.
Well, she got hurt.
Yeah.
Like when you fall from the top rope and really get a bad concussion, I think it just says maybe this isn't for me.
And land on the concrete floor with nobody catching you. Sure.
Jeez.
I thought I was going to be the one to make that joke.
Oh boy.
Oh, man.
Scott
How was
doesn't
it?
give
So
a shit.
are we done? Is the show over? Is that it? Because it's pushing 10 o'clock here on the beach. I'm in the cool of night. No, I'm kidding.
Oh boy. So Starrcade '98.
Oh boy, here we are.
Some would say if you think about it, you because I was thinking about it earlier, I'm like, this is kind of the sandwiched in between '97, which was one of the highest grossing buy rate pay-per-view in WCW's history.
Right.
And of course, the ending was unsatisfactory to most. Brother. And then 98, of course, you now have Goldberg, who's undefeated, won the championship back in July at the Georgia Dome. Hulk Hogan had retired the previous month earlier. Hulk Hogan is nowhere to be found on the card, not
And
even
he will
mentioned.
never be back.
Nothing. And he will never be back. Never be back. There's no looming at all. It is a Hoganless Starrcade. The main event. Bill Goldberg.
Still a better Hogan Starrcade
Kevin
than his
Nash.
match against the Butcher in '94.
Yes, but of course, this is also 5 years after. You think about it, 5 years before, where it was Vader and Ric Flair as the main event actually it was in Charlotte, I think the old Independence Arena. And now 5 years later, WCW is still in conversation, at least, as one of the top companies in all of professional wrestling. However, have lost quite a bit of ground to where they were the previous year. And
It's an understatement.
and kind of now questions are now being loomed about the company, the health of it, the longevity of the company. And they decide that it's going to be Bill Goldberg and Kevin Nash as the main event. which I'm sure we will get to, will not have any controversy whatsoever.
No.
Because they do not want to happen what happened the year before happen again.
So, honest question, when it comes to WCW at this time, I love the company. Don't get me wrong, in general.
That's right. That line right there, David, is I'm not a racist, but
my question.
I love WCW, but they were fucked up from the top down, from the secretaries and the travel girls all the way up to Eric. Right? Right? Am I right?
No, I see good points. My question is, 98, the ratings have gone down a little bit. They didn't draw as much as 97. Did everyone just collectively completely overreact to what was probably still a very manageable situation they were actually in?
Define everybody. Who do you mean?
All the head honchos, the bosses, the Turner executives, anyone who has any hand in the pot of where the company's going.
Believe it or not, we were still making money. And
that's what I mean.
That's all they wanted. Are you making money? Yeah. Well, good enough. Now, we weren't making nearly the money we made in 97, which we weren't making nearly the money we made in 96 and 95. But 99 is when it turned south. Oh. And this was, I don't know if you guys are golfers, this was the turn, from the front nine to the back nine of WCW's financial trajectory. Was Starrcade 98. And Daniel and I have talked about this, and we talked about it via email and text. And last time, that 97, Starrcade 97 sucked, but we weathered that okay. We made it through 98 all right. But when we got here, this is the one where everything turned. This is the front nine to the back nine. You ready? Are you ready for a joke? Maybe. This is my, I wish I could have been a stand-up comic. I've had 15 careers in my life, none of them stand-up comic. You ready for this joke? Mm-hmm. You guys may want to take notes. So a husband and wife are out playing golf. First time she's ever been on the course. She comes out. It's a first shot. Of course it goes, she hooks it. Husband comes up. They keep going and he's giving her tips. And everything's going well, and she gets worse and worse and worse as they make the turn. And he can't believe that his tips and instruction aren't working. She's just getting worse and worse, and he's second-guessing his own abilities. And before they tee off at the 10th hole, he says, "You're not getting any better at this. What do you think? What happened? Why is this not working?" She said, "Well, if you must know, I think I got stung by a bee between the first and second hole." And he said, "Maybe your stance is too wide."
I get it. This ain't the joke I was expecting.
Maybe your stance is too wide. Hello?
But I have argued in the past that, like, anyone who says that WCW was screwed because of 97 clearly didn't watch the product. And 98, in my view, if executed right, Starrcade 98, if executed right, is another opportunity for WCW to lead the way and showcase that they are still a relevant, strong, and vibrant company.
They were still drawing well in 99.
Yeah.
Super Brawl drew well, like as a pay-per-view, and that was Hogan and Flair on top.
It was like one show did not doom the company, and in honestly, Starrcade 98 as a show overall is not that bad. It's actually a lot of good on it, in my opinion.
Right.
But this was this, in my view, was another opportunity for the company to thrive. Didn't work out quite so well, but it was there.
You're right. I agree with you, David. This was not like, when the plane, hit the ground. This was all right. We could have weathered this and come back, and we did. Like Super Brawl, as Daniel said, Super Brawl was all right. But
we still had other opportunities.
This was the turn. Everything started to go south at this show, and every night, and from here on, we were just flickering and having bits of success, but the trajectory was going down creatively and then eventually financially.
Yeah.
So we start the card with Billy Kidman and Rey Mysterio Jr.
Hey, hang on one
Moving
second.
to
Can I jump in 1 second and say
Sure.
this? This was Starrcade. This
Yes.
was our WrestleMania.
Yes, it was.
You know, if
Yes.
this were some kind of knockoff September pay-per-view or early summer pay-per-view, and as my friend Steve Beverly used to call them in the old Matt Watch newsletter, a maintenance pay-per-view or a transition pay-per-view, not something that you blow everything off. This was our WrestleMania.
Right.
And you look at this card and you look at the results and the reviews and you think, this is supposed to be as good as we got, and it's nowhere close.
That's
And
why
Mm-hmm.
for the good and bad, it's nowhere close to being as good as we should have been.
It's funny. Sorry, Dan.
ahead.
I just think it's funny that you say that, Scott, because it's so true. Like, I remember looking at this card and like, this is Starrcade?
yeah.
Like, it's not a bad card for a pay-per-view, don't get me wrong, but it didn't feel like a Starrcade card, if anything.
That Rey Mysterio and Billy Kidman match, that was fire.
Well, and Hoovy was in that too.
Yeah,
I think
It was a three-way.
Yep.
it was fantastic, but I also look at it as Scott's right, as on paper, it's not a Starrcade show. Like, it's just not. It's not Starrcade. It doesn't have Starrcade kind of vibe to it.
That's a good point.
I
Like,
think
where's Luger? I don't know how many of these guys are actually injured at this point. Like, there's a lot of names out there. It's like, where are they?
Luger had a backstage segment. That was it.
that's true, right?
Yeah. Luger's a hot commodity. And the NWO Red and Black is hot commodity. I mean, they're the red. Is that right? Red, black. Yeah, they're a hot commodity. People love them. They're selling merch. It's like, that's the thing I remember as a kid, because in my part of the country, we didn't give a shit about WWF. We were watching WCW. The NWO Wolfpack was hot.
Yeah.
And what? Let me see. What they were? Yeah, Conan wrestled. Kevin Nash wrestled. Sting's nowhere to be seen. Luger has a backstage segment. Savage isn't there.
David, do you live in like South Padre Island? Where do you live?
No, I was living in
We
southern
should have
Missouri.
run wherever that is, like every week.
I was living in southwest Missouri. I don't want to get too detailed in case.
Well, yeah, in case the FBI is watching or Vince Russo's got your
I get
triangulated on the. No,
I've got
you're
death threats on our
exactly right.
page.
You're right. This, we had the guys, and this was a Clash card, a Clash of the Champions card.
Yes.
And which would have been great, but it was Starrcade. It was our mania,
pay-per-view.
and it just even when you look at this show, and no offense to the talent on the show, this is not a WrestleMania equivalent or a WrestleMania adjacent lineup. Just looking at it on paper, and here's another thing for anyone that thinks they know the business, in that you have to book a big show like it's a big show. We were booking pay-per-views at the time to build to the Nitro,
To TV.
which made no sense.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
And that's what we were doing. We were looking at this going, why are we doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? Why are we doing these matches? Oh, so we can build up the next night
Monday
on Nitro to get a rating. Why?
I have a question for you about that.
Paying for this, and that's what we couldn't get past. And we never stopped for the rest of WCW's run. It seemed like, to me, every pay-per-view was to build up to get a rating for Nitro, instead of Nitro getting a buy rate for the pay-per-view, which is what it should have been.
Yeah. I think the WWF was running a little bit like that too, but they eventually got back to the pay-per-view being the center point.
Yeah, correct.
I think
Anyway.
the last Starrcade that I kind of felt like a Starrcade, at least, the original inception was probably 93. Because 94, you had the Hogan and Butcher match be the main event. 95 was kind of...
let's see.
It was Flair and Savage kind of with the... I think it was like a triangle match.
It was the invading Japanese, too.
Yep, it was the kind of New Japan Super Show. Then 96, Hogan and Piper as your main event.
Is that the one where we did
match.
Piper at Alcatraz?
That was Super Brawl 2 months later. That was for the rematch. But that was...
My apologies.
So, no.
I like that Piper and Hogan match, though.
Well, the funny part is that, like, here it is. Hogan loses clean to Piper, but the title is not on the line.
And they just kind of, I know we're not talking about 96, but they just kind of like Hogan versus Piper for the title. The title is not on the line. They are going to fight it out at Starrcade. The title is not on the line.
Match of the century. Title not on the line. What?
It was like little fine print practically.
When you do the post-mortem for WCW, the two words that never get mentioned enough for me, as far as what killed WCW, not to harken back to the Vice TV series from earlier this year. First off, Jamie Kellner is the answer. Threw him sideways with a barbed wire wrapped baseball bat. But the second one is creative control. When you've got talent, and remember, this is Starrcade. It's December. There are guys, and probably guys, who you can look at this lineup and say, why isn't fill in the blank on this show? They were out of dates. They were only going to work X number of dates for the year, and they were out of dates, and we couldn't use them. And they also had creative control that if we had a date on them, I'm not going under. I'm not doing the job. I'm not only that, I'm going over. Well, we don't
I have
have
a presidential campaign to think of. I can't be at the show.
Exactly. Exactly right. And those are things when you talk about, what was Eric's role? Well, for 98, what was Eric's role? Vince wasn't here yet. Was he's having to juggle all of that. It's not what's best for business, to coin a phrase from Hunter. It's who's out of dates, who's got creative control, who's going to pull their creative control and say, I'm not going under. Well, then you're not on the show. Well, I get paid anyway because my deal says I get X number of dollars, whether I'm on the show or not. Well, we got to have you on the show so we can draw money. Okay, well, then put me over. We're not going to put you over. And that's what Eric was dealing with every single day in WCW. Now, granted, you can say that it might have been his fault for letting those kind of contracts be let. That's an argument. But that's what Eric was trying to manage. And when you look at it through that lens, this was about as good a show as could have been put together, considering those limitations of who's out.
Is that why a lot of the Starrcades are weak? Is that why a lot of the Starrcades are weak in WCW when the earlier pay-per-views of the year tend to be stronger because they had problem with dates?
Yes, 100%. Yes,
fair enough.
And it didn't get better in '99 either.
That's
That's an understatement because they were terrible in '99.
I love WCW up until Russo.
Turner never, I felt like, treated Starrcade the way that it should have been, because Starrcade originally was a Thanksgiving night tradition. Then they moved it to December, even though December is kind of a harder month to sell pay-per-views because
I think they were trying to get away from Survivor Series, though.
Which is fair,
true and fair, yeah.
But at the same time, I always looked at WCW and WWE fans as two different audiences. There was very few there was a gray area, but mostly it was black and white. It was like,
but I don't think executives thought like that. Like I don't even think WWF executives thought that like that because they seem to think when they bought WCW that 2 million fans were going to switch to USA. Sorry, or whichever network they were on, and that just did not happen. 2 million fans just simply stopped watching.
That was the thing. Like that they were kind of because I remember going to high school and I wore an NWO shirt one time and they were just like, we only like Austin in this school. I'm like, really? Like,
Yeah, but that was the thing. When at my school, they loved NWO. Okay, it was hot. Everyone was wearing the damn shirts.
yep.
When it went away, nobody gave a damn about Austin. Nobody gave a damn about The Rock. They moved on. They found something else. I grew up in the country, so it was a lot of country music that they went to. But they went somewhere else. They didn't go to WWF because that's just the way it is. People like what they like, and they're not going to just jump to the other show.
I think it goes both ways. I think there was the WCW fans. I think there was the WWF or WWE fans. And I think there were fans that are probably a little bit like Dan and myself back then that were, and you, and anybody else that's, I would say, was a true fan that, channel surfing between the two shows, whatever is bigger at that moment, you're watching that one.
Just enjoy wrestling. No.
I will, damn it.
I think Mac is exactly right, and that is what. And when we're at Starrcade '98, I get that we're still a year away from Russo and Ferrara and Bill Banks joining our team, but this was what became Crash TV, at least for us. Yeah. And it's what Jim Cornette. I assume you guys know Cornette's work.
Oh yeah.
What he always called bullshit click, where I'm going to flip back and forth between Raw and Nitro, and whatever I see, if it looks like bullshit, click.
Yep.
And go back to the other show.
100%.
And you have that much time to grab the audience. You don't have a lot of time to have some kind of 1995 or 96 Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, or Dean Malenko, Chris Jericho match where they're doing, 90 seconds of an Abe Jacobs Kiwi roll around the ring to hook the audience. It's got to be instant. And at this point, we were in the bullshit click era where we had to, grab your attention immediately, or you were going to turn to the other show. Now, not on a pay-per-view, obviously, but definitely on Monday nights.
Yeah, my uncle would he would watch whichever show he thought was better, and then he'd have the other one on like the preview in the corner. And then as soon as one of them looked more interesting than the other, he would just like hit a button and it would flip to that. I remember this.
Yeah. The old PIP, I remember that.
Oh yeah.
It's an old
listen, I remember if my parents were out of the house because I was in high school, I would have one TV recording Nitro. I'd be upstairs watching Raw or vice versa. I'm just, that's the way I would do it. But obviously, they're home more often than not. So yeah, it was channel surfing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of miss those days. I miss the days of the days of having two really big options where they were really putting out their best. But also, I think the talent pool was a lot stronger back then, where now it's like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
There's talent, just not the talent I think that just jumps off the page like there was back then.
Oh, they're jumping all right.
I think there's also the lack of head-to-head now too. I think it's the big thing. The only head-to-head is maybe if WWE is running a PLE on Saturday, and that's it.
And sometimes Dynamite shows up on Tuesday, and
that's true too. Yeah,
they lose to NXT or barely win. In either case, it doesn't look good.
Well, I mean, either way, WWE is stacking those NXT shows when they do the head-to-heads too.
Yeah, and only getting about 150,000 more people for when they do it.
Daniel, David and I talked about this when I was on the show last, and that is when we were at our peak, when the Monday Night Wars were at their incredible peak, there was 10 million people watching wrestling.
Yep.
Now, it ended up being 7 million people were watching Raw and 3 million were watching Nitro, and that kept getting further and further apart. But regardless, there were still 10 million people. And when we went away and when ECW went away, 10 million people weren't watching Raw. No. And they used to put out press releases when they would hit 2 million viewers.
Yeah.
And, here we are in 2024, and it's still about the same. Where did those 10 million people go? They didn't die. Maybe some of them did, but not enough to make a difference.
I think a portion of them went to UFC.
Exactly.
That's a good point.
Then, Springsteen had the song called 57 Channels and Nothing On. And I remember hearing that back in the late 90s thinking, 57 channels, God, I don't have anything close to that. Now there's like 1,257 channels, if not more.
Yes,
most of them
exactly.
It's like, okay. Like so Raw is on
a lot of other options.
Raw is on USA Network. Dynamite is on TBS. But both of those fucking networks have next to nothing on but syndicated reruns when they're not showing wrestling.
I know.
Which in my view does nothing to help the product, because people don't have a reason to tune in the channel to begin with. They don't know Raw is there, Dynamite's there. Why would they even go? Because it's just reruns of Law and Order or whatever they're doing on TBS.
Well, who knows what Raw's going to be doing now when they go to Netflix?
Well, that's
what I was thinking too.
That's going to be a big get. That's
Shawshank Redemption. That's what TBS is doing for the 15,000th time.
I think Shawshank
Redemption. A bad movie.
Oh man,
Shawshank Redemption. I think is getting better ratings right now than some of the AEW product that's been going on lately. So.
Well, Collision for sure. Ooh.
Yeah,
Collision and Rampage are probably doing better.
I mean, okay, Collision's ratings are lower than that Women of Wrestling show.
Yeah,
Women of Wrestling has been averaging about 300,000 when I last checked.
And that's syndicated. That's not even like on a, like. I think Cornette's views are doing. Some of Cornette's show views are doing better than anything that AEW is putting out right now.
Oh yeah,
of course,
and it's ridiculous. Like, and this is the number 2 promotion in the entire country.
But people are starting to debate if they're even the number 2 anymore.
Yeah,
I think they are, but I'm starting to see people question it.
I mean, they're number 2 as far as money wise. As far as like I'd love to be able to sit here. Impact's doing great things. Impact is doing a hell of a lot better than they were 2 or 3 years ago. But the problem is that when you're on TNT, you're on TBS. That might not be prime real estate that it was 20 years ago, but it's still prime real estate. You're still on network TV. You still have the option to be in all these homes. Mind you, it's not the numbers that it was, again, 10, 15 years ago. Maybe not even 5 years ago. Maybe not even 3. But at the same time, you still have the optics out there. You still have Time Warner behind you. You're still going to be going on Max come the first of the year.
Which even for a rough product, that actually should be good for them, even with all their problems.
They are ECW in 1999. They got national TV and get more exposure when they're at their worst. As far as creative is concerned and also talent-wise, because ECW went to TNN and they lost Taz and the Dudley Boys at the exact same time they got the deal. And they went off to WWF.
Ouch. Yeah,
so that's what AEW is facing. They have a talent roster and it just keeps getting worse. Every week I'm hearing more stuff and I'm just like, you've got to be kidding.
Still remember when The Rock killed Dudley Stutter. Because Dudley was doing his thing, and then The Rock goes, and then after that, and Dudley stopped doing the stutter.
I don't know. I hate to bore you with current stuff, Scott, but it's like the current business. The current business, I feel like needs to kind of just be addressed because it is common right now because you're looking at what we're talking about with Starrcade 98 and what you're saying of that this is the beginning of the back nine of what WCW becomes. And
Hoping that isn't also the case with AEW because I don't like what they're doing, but I don't want them to fail. Is that fair? I don't like what they're doing, but I don't want them to fail.
I think it's fair, but at the same token, it's to call them a number two is almost painful in some cases. Just being honest.
Yeah.
They have a lot of talent. Going back to the conversation about WCW and the back nine, especially, you can compare it to this, right? Because WCW at the time, much like AEW now, does have talent. It's not a lack of talent, it's a lack of direction. Or it's a direction that they really shouldn't be going down. And that's the problem. And Tony Khan needs to course correct. And I don't think he's really capable of doing it the way that's necessary to succeed.
I agree with Mac that, and all of you, that what we're seeing isn't bad booking or certainly absolutely not a lack of talent. We're just seeing a failure to evolve. This business used to evolve in periods of like 7 to 10 years. You look at like 1970 to 1977, 1977 to 1984, 1984 to 1991.
Yep.
That's what the evolutionary period was. And then it became about a 3-year evolutionary period. And now it's about a 1-year evolutionary period. And AEW, if what they're doing right now, if this were December of 2022 even, they'd be fine. This is December 2024. Next year's 2025. They're going to have to evolve and change with the times. They don't need to become a low-rent version of the WWE. They need to become a high-rent version of AEW, and they're not doing anything except, at best, treading water, and at worst, going backwards. They've got to figure out a way to evolve and change and progress, and they're just kind of stuck in a rut. I remember, back in the day, you go out, God, this makes me as old as you guys' granddad, but you go out parking with your girlfriend and get stuck in the mud, and then you've got to find somebody to tow you out of the muck and mire of a South Georgia swamp because you were out making out with your girlfriend and you're spinning your wheels. They're spinning their wheels, and they're going to need to find some way to get themselves towed out of that mire, or they're going to sit there and stay and never get out.
I'm going to cede your analogy for a second, Scott, because that was me, except my car just completely broke down. Didn't get stuck. It just broke down. So I think the analogy is very similar in that sense of whether you want to say they're stuck in a swamp or their car broke down. I agree with both sentiments because...
Was that building 100%. 19 in Norwood?
No, it was not. You can shut your pie hole. Thank you very much. Dan knows all my inside stories. But, ironically enough, Dan, same girl.
Oh.
I do feel like there's a lot of positive to say about Starrcade 98, though. Like, going on the Kidman thing.
Double A, double Z.
Just going on. I really like the way I really like the way they've done this before with Booker T. I think where Kidman won a match and then he had to face another match. He'd get to win 2 matches that night, except he wasn't winning a title; he was defending it. Because like Booker T won a title that way, at least maybe twice, but definitely once. Because first he had to defeat Hoovy and Ray, and then he had to defeat Eddie.
Yeah,
I thought that was, and Eddie was such a hateable man here, and I love every bit of it.
This is also Eddie's, I think, last match before he had that car crash on New Year's of '99.
Right.
He had that car crash like a couple of days later, which that ended up changing the course of some things that ended
wrestling history.
Yeah.
God, that mullet was so great too at the time.
Gonna be the Radicals.
Yeah.
I hated the music that WWF gave to them when they showed up. The Radicals theme is terrible. I might be in the minority here, and I don't care.
It was cool to just have them in the company, for that matter. Yeah. Like when they showed up, I was just happy to see them because all 4 of these guys, well, 4 of those guys who were really heavy promoted on this show.
Yeah, they were great in WCW. Like
They
Saturn,
did.
nothing.
Pretty much
nothing
your
Saturn
entire
did anywhere else is
undercard.
better than his WCW stuff. At least because he wasn't presented well in WWE because he had a relationship with a fucking mop.
So,
But then,
hold on. Let's segue for a second on that. Just for sake of argument, Scott, I have a question about Perry Saturn specifically. Just because of what happened in WWE, like, did he really have a bad temper, Perry Saturn, or is it just kind of overblown?
In WCW, he didn't. In WCW, he was just one of the guys. He did what he was told. He was in insanely good shape. That's what I remember about Saturn almost more than anything is the guy he's one of those guys that you would see in the locker room doing back bridges into a neck bridge and stay there for like 10 minutes.
Wow.
I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about. Just go all the way back, top of your head on the floor on a towel and stay there and rock himself back and forth just to stretch. And I remember thinking, wow, that looks like it hurts. And, but Saturn was
city.
Yeah.
He was a nice guy, worked hard, did what he was told. I mean, Jesus Christ, you look at this thing with the mop in the WWE.
Yeah.
What was that? That's not somebody that's got an attitude problem.
I heard that was punishment because he ended up, there was a preliminary wrestler, and it's online, the video.
Yeah, he took liberties because the guy went hard on him.
Dropped him on his head.
He was a jobber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was, but that's why I asked the question, because I do remember that. I do remember that was the punishment of giving him moppy. But that's why I was curious if he had an attitude or what.
I remember Raw in 1993 where freaking Kurt Hennig just took this jobber to town because he wouldn't chop him right, and Kurt Hennig just snatched him and just beat him to death, and then not literally death, obviously.
Yeah,
and
obviously.
Then he goes, "Hey, Randy, watch this," and he just beats him some more. So that's what if jobbers don't do it right. When they're in there with the big names and they don't do it right, the big names make them pay for it.
That's
the wrestling business.
There was a famous incident with the skyscrapers and some preliminary. Oh my God!
Oh, I've seen that.
Scott,
Mike Blackwell.
Yes,
and, the Avalanche. Yeah,
bad idea. It's like, I'm just gonna no sell Sid Vicious and Dan Spivey.
Ugh.
Yeah, I'm just gonna do that. It was both 6'9".
It was Mike Bell, by the way, the jobber who Saturn took to town.
Right, yeah.
I remember the other guy jumped in briefly, and it looked like Sid was like, "Hey, you don't want no smoke. Go away.
Go away."
Kind of goes
away. You could tell Spivey or Sid, one of the two of them, before he tossed him, said like something like, "This isn't about you," and just tossed him.
Yeah.
And so he hit the bricks. But Saturn, there were no problems. I don't remember any problem. There were people in WCW that were problems. And it's nobody that you don't know, but Perry Saturn wasn't one of them.
Nobody we don't know.
So I don't know. I don't know what happened with him up there.
Oh, I know it.
But this is a culture thing that in WCW, what happened with Mike Blackwell and the skyscrapers, that's what Saturn knew. I don't know. He wasn't around then. He was still doing indies, I guess, back then.
Still brought up with people.
Yeah,
like
but
that.
that's what we did. The jobber screws me. The jobber wants to put himself over or get his heat back because his parents are in the front row. No, you're going to pay a price. And so Saturn goes up there, and whoever the job guy was that he took liberties with, I mean, didn't hurt the guy, didn't kill him, but that's just not the culture in the WWF at the time. And so we got punished.
It's not like the Beverly Brothers breaking a guy's face and then just kind of pushing it out of the camera's view.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's not the right thing to do, but do you punish?
I don't.
You just fire them, but you don't punish them. But Saturn made that work. He put the gimmicks in his eyes, and he wore like the leather skirt or whatever the hell he was doing. He got it. People remember that, and that's all that matters.
I think
the thing about Saturn is I watched almost all the late period WCW pay-per-views over the last 2 years, and every time Perry Saturn came on, it was always, for me, a good experience. I don't ever remember a single. Some things were better than others, of course, that's natural. But I don't remember a single match featuring Perry Saturn and I thought sucked.
That's why I asked too, because I feel the same way. Absolutely.
Same.
Yeah.
I've always been high on Saturn. I thought the Raven match he had, I think it was Fall Brawl 98, was just a goddamn masterpiece.
God, yeah.
It was for control of the flock. It was like he was trying to flee the flock, and it was so real. It was really well done, and everything I thought he did with Booker T was good too. Like he had a really good career in WCW.
Even that Road Wild match, the triple threat with Canyon.
Oh yeah,
that was. I mean, it's not like the most classic triple threat, but it was a fun, enjoyable match, and a lot of it's just because Saturn's there, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it was lower card, early mid card stuff. That's all you want from that. You're not going to get somebody, headlining the pay-per-view with that. Saturn and Canyon aren't going to headline a pay-per-view, but they certainly put on a good match at Road Wild. Saturn and the Cat, Ernest Miller, on Starrcade 98 to bring it back full circle. Yeah. That wasn't a horrible match. There's certainly been better, but it wasn't one of those that was horrible and made it one of the worst shows ever. That started in the next match. But we'll get to that.
I liked Ernest Miller.
Yeah.
I really
That's what I was going to say. I thought that Perry Saturn's wrestling ability and the Cat's ability to play the crowd, I thought just meshed really well.
Yeah.
I think he looked
not
like
a bad match at all.
He looked like a smaller version of like an 80s wrestler. I mean, the muscled up type, but he wrestled and moved like a large Rey Mysterio, and he had all the psychology down and stuff too. Yeah, it was great.
I always thought Ernest Miller should have probably been the original Virgil, because he would have been able to get himself over and made himself like a really, like, truly kind of beloved babyface, but also at the same time, he would have been able to do his karate stuff and been able to actually be a real threat behind Ted DiBiase.
On the subject of Ernest Miller, has anyone noticed that god-awful WWE version of Ernest Miller's theme on Peacock?
Oh, yeah,
they replaced the James Brown with some clown orchestra version of James Brown.
They don't like playing residuals.
I understand that.
No
but it's
copyrights.
trash. Oh, they'll pay residuals for a couple people, but like the people they really like. But no, they shit on James Brown. As far as I'm concerned, that's disrespectful.
It is
fucking Brown.
It is extremely disrespectful. That Super Brawl 2000 cameo is still one of the most random things I've ever seen in the history of professional wrestling. Like,
James Brown?
They didn't even promote it, and all of a sudden he's just there. I'm like,
Ernest must have been a kid in a candy store with that.
That's exactly right. David's exactly right. You have never seen anyone in the business pop more for a celebrity walk-on or a celebrity appearance than Ernest did when James Brown. That was all a shoot.
That was his dream.
Him and James Brown. He was a monster James Brown fan. Still is. Whatever you saw emotionally from Ernest was a shoot.
I would love to feel just whatever he was feeling that moment, because that man was in that Happy Gilmore movie, in his happy place. That man was in his happy place right there.
He really was. But the Maestro's reaction to it was priceless too, where he just literally just fainted in the ring.
Yeah.
But that was But I just remember that on pay-per-view. I'm like, why didn't they promote that?
I wasn't expecting it.
It's just like, it just comes out of nowhere. It's like,
then I had to go find
Nitro, pop a number.
Then I had to go find the version on YouTube so I can find it without being fucking edited by WWE. The music.
Yeah. Of course, they're going to cut the music out of that. Yeah. No, but do you have any good cat stories? Do you have any good cat stories, Scott?
And then none.
Yeah.
Ernest Miller was just a straight up good guy, tough guy.
Okay.
He wasn't. I mean, all that martial arts stuff wasn't a work. He knew what he was doing.
5-time karate champion.
Yeah. Somebody called my mama, and they stole his bit for. Oh God, what's his name?
Oh God,
Oh, it's going
Tyrus.
to kill me. Yeah, Tyrus, whatever his name was.
Brodus Clay.
Yeah, Brodus Clay.
Brodus Clay.
They stole Ernest Miller's bit for Brodus Clay, and not knocking Brodus Clay, who's a terrific talent. I got no problem with him, but they just stole Ernest Miller's bit for Brodus Clay back, 10, 12, 15 years ago. But no Ernest Miller stories. He was just a good guy. He was, of course, Eric's kid's karate teacher, and that's how he found him.
That's one way
Why
to
does
do
it
it.
have to get confirmed? Damn it. Because it's one of those things. It's like, that was a rumor, and I didn't want people to like. That was one of those things. I'm like, oh God, I hope that's not true, because then it just sounds.
I'll put it this way: I've never heard anything but that from people in the business.
Okay.
I mean, it could be a work. I don't know, but why would you make that if you're going to create a work story for Ernest Miller to be in the business? Why would that be it?
Yeah, it's because
I
then
know
people are
that-
just going to be like, what?
I remember storyline wise, he was Ernest Miller was running WCW for a little bit in the storylines, and it was one of the pay-per-views. It might have been Bash at the Beach. He's just coming out of his car, and three ninja wrestlers just attack him, and he kicks the shit out of them. He says something, one of his classic lines, like he ain't got time, and he just goes in. I think one of them was like, they're all presented as Japanese, but I think one of them was like Kid Cash or something under a mask. It might have been like Shannon Moore, one of the little guys that were late WCW dudes. The whole scene was just hilarious, just kicking the shit out of those three jobbers, like three ninja jobbers, just randomly.
Yeah, I wish I had funny stories like we did Gene Okerlund stories and Bobby Heenan stories before. No, none for the cat. He was just a normal, nice guy, hardworking fella, tough guy.
Yeah.
No problem with him at all. I do remember this when The Wrestler came out, the movie. God, what is that, 10, 12 years ago, forever ago with Mickey Rourke.
Right.
When it debuted, a lot of us got together to go see it, a lot of us being WCW people, and Kat kind of spearheaded that. So we all got together and went to Phipps Plaza. I don't know, you guys are not from Atlanta. That's like a really, really nice upscale shopping center in Buckhead, north of Midtown in downtown Atlanta. And we all got together to go see The Wrestlers. It was like a group of like 25 to 30 wrestlers or WCW people watching The Wrestler, and Ernest kind of put that together. I remember because my wife, Casey, and our daughter, Darby, went with me, and they had no desire to see The Wrestler, and they went to another theater to see some movie about a cat. Do you remember? It was some movie that had some kids movie about a cat, not the cat, but that was the joke, is I'm with the cat seeing The Wrestler, and they're in another theater seeing a cat movie. But no, that's the best Ernest Miller story I got. Just a good guy.
Underrated.
Really underrated. Like, just as a personality. And I thought what he did in the ring, too, was okay. Because there are some guys, martial arts wise, that really haven't translated well to the professional wrestling business. Which brings me to my next match.
Yay!
Brian Adams and Scott Norton versus Finlay and Jerry fucking Flynn. Jesus.
I hate this match. This is the actual worst match on the card, not the Goldberg Nash match, okay? This is a garbage ass match.
How did Jerry
First
Flynn
off, any match with Fit Finlay should not be anywhere close to a discussion of the worst match on the show. Period.
Absolutely not. You're
I
right.
was thinking the same thing too as we started talking about this. Like Fit Finlay in a bad match just doesn't make sense to me.
He's a
And when
great
you look
wrestler,
at-
but you know what? Yeah, I don't blame him. It's a tag match. I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
sure
not
it
his
was
fault.
Finlay's fault.
No.
And he's in there
I
against
can't blame
Brian.
Finlay.
He's in there against Brian and Scott, who are ridiculously tough. You know, they'd kill you. You know,
What
they
happened to
would
Scott
have no.
Norton after WCW?
Oh,
What happened to him?
Probably
I always-
bounty hunting.
I looked at him as a guy who probably would have translated very well over to WWE, but then he just didn't go there, and I didn't really see him pop up hardly anywhere else.
I got Wiki up. He went back to New Japan Pro Wrestling.
He was IWGP champion at one point, I believe.
Yeah, he did go back to New Japan, but his run as a major player didn't last long after that, and we know what happened to Brian, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I don't know what to say about that match. I went in preparation for this. I went back and watched, and this wouldn't have been. I wouldn't have looked at this on paper and said that's going to be the biggest abortion of a match on the show, bar none, and it was.
Well, Shawn Michaels and Kurt Hennig had a match together, and it sucked. And it's hard to imagine putting those two in the ring and saying
SummerSlam '93, I believe.
Yeah, so if they can stink, if two of the best ever can stink it up, shit happens.
It does. I mean, but like,
No, that was partly the booking, and which means Vince's fault because it was like some of those weird non-finishes, and that particular SummerSlam loved bullshit non-finishes.
Oh, that '93 SummerSlam was
right.
Yeah,
it's drizzling shits. I don't know. Did you watch? I know you're a WCW guy, but did you watch some of the WWE pay-per-views at the time?
As much as I could, but that wasn't much. The truth is, and I said this when I was on the show before with you guys, I didn't see any ECW until they were out of business.
Right.
Same here.
At all. And
a lot of people won't admit that.
I saw very little WWF while we were in the Monday Night Wars. I know there were a lot of folks that flipping back and forth. It's kind of hard to do when you're, at ringside. They don't give you a monitor with.
You're not in Gorilla.
Hey, let's flip over and see what's happening on Raw while you're calling the show. So I didn't see an awful lot of that. I would record it and then watch it later in the week, but the schedule was so insane, I didn't get a chance to see much of it. So no.
Bruce Pritchard sort of backtracked off and on this. But from time to time on his podcast, he's admitted that Vince McMahon had someone assigned to watch Nitro. But in other times, he acts like that's not true. But we're pretty sure he had a guy watching Nitro.
Yeah, it was Finkel, wasn't it? Wasn't it Howard Finkel?
Might have been. You're right.
Yeah,
Finkel, because Finkel used to write a report every day, before everybody got in, and would pretty much let everybody know in the office at Titan Towers everything that was going on inside the industry, right. At least all the news, rumors, and that type of stuff. And he would do this every day, write like his own column.
Probably
just for
way
the
better
internal.
than Meltzer.
I mean, hey, some people talk to Dave, some people don't. I mean, that was the going rumor that it was Finkel was talking to Dave all those years. But at one point, even Meltzer has stated that Vince even was talking to him at one point, so I don't know exactly. Yeah,
that's true.
I'm sure that I'm sure everybody at one point was talking to Dave. Like Dave,
I'm going to say, I'll tell you the guys the truth. Not that I haven't been telling the truth all night, but I started in the business, such as it is, as a stringer and a writer for Dave Meltzer in 1984. Wow.
Yeah, you talked about that last time.
Yep.
I understand that he's got heat like a pizza oven now, and I get that, and I understand why. But everybody in the business at every level does. But I had no problem with him back in the day. I haven't talked to him in 5 or 6 years. I think the last time I talked to him was when Starrcade was doing their thing in Baltimore and down at Rosemont and in Vegas and in Tampa. But I talked to him then. I haven't talked to him since. But I got no problem with him. And I get that he's got heat and why he's got heat. But I'm not going to say anything bad about Dave. Dave,
fair enough.
What was there at the beginning for me, literally 40 years ago. 84 was 40 years ago. And that's when I started learning about the business and learning how it was a work and who was who and who shot John and whatever. But I got no problem at all with Dave or Wade Keller or any of those guys, John McAdam, all those guys back in the 80s that did the dirt sheets and the newsletters. Without them, I would still be, wearing my Rock and Roll Express T-shirt and having bandanas tied around my thighs. Not that I don't now, but it's only because you can't see.
Okay.
You got the Kiss shirt on.
I was going to say, I think the Kiss shirt actually fits you.
I
better,
dig
though.
that though. That's fine. I dig that.
Yes.
Hold on, before we go,
This is not a Kiss shirt. This is a Dale Torborg shirt.
Nice.
Before we go on to any of the other matches, we did forget one match. It was Norman Smiley versus the artist formerly known as Prince Iaukea.
I think he was still known as Prince Iaukea.
He was at the time, yeah. He was at the time. So
I really like
Norman.
Norman a lot. I don't like Prince Iaukea at all. So it was a mixed match
What
for
did
me.
Prince Iaukea do to you? Like, that's the most random thing.
It is.
He's good in the ring. He doesn't win beyond that, in my opinion. But it is what it
You
is.
can say that about a lot of talent. But
Norman Smiley at the time was on a run too. I feel like
I think he was just getting. I think he was on the verge of just getting started because he was about
to blow up.
He was about to have the
so
best
hold on.
shit. He had the best shit of the whole Russo era is him as the hardcore champion. I will defend that to my grave. That is the most enjoyable thing out of the Russo era. And that's
Top
about
5 comedy wrestler of all time, Norman Smiley.
He dressed up, coming out like riot gear or hockey gear, and every time somebody even aims a chair in his general direction, he just shrieks at the top of his lungs like a little girl.
That's exactly the reaction we were looking for.
I love that he was doing like the romp thing as a taunt too. I thought that was hilarious.
Right? And Norman Smiley, remember, was a shooter.
Yep.
Yeah.
He knew what the hell he was doing.
Oh yeah.
He could tie you in knots and make you bleed from your ears. He was nobody to mess with. And he wrestled for all those years in Mexico in the lucha as was he Black Magic down there and also in either New Japan or All Japan. I can't remember. So he knew what he was doing. And gosh, maybe still to this day, he's a trainer, I guess, for the WWE. Is he? No, he wasn't.
He was under, I know he was under the
current.
system for a while. I don't know if he's current. No, he did have a hand in training some of the female talent, including him and Finley both. Finley, I think, were really.
According to Wikipedia, he is still a trainer.
He is. He's another he's another to me like Saturn who. Every time he came on screen, I just enjoyed it. I never really had a bad on-screen experience from watching a match or a segment featuring him.
You forget he was there. And like David was saying, that when he comes like, oh, that's right, Norman Smiley's in the promotion.
Yep.
And then he goes, oh, this will be good. And then the match is over and you enjoyed it, and then you forget that he's there until the next time he comes out.
Yep.
We just never built him up. But then again, his check didn't bounce. He was making money. He was happy.
He looked like he was having fun a lot most of his run.
Yeah,
absolutely.
He probably does pretty well in the convention scene too, because there's probably a lot of people that remember him fondly. So and I'm sure getting a picture done with the little dance that he was doing too.
You said you don't remember Norman Smiley. Yes, a lot of cases that might be true, but I'll never forget him coming out in the hockey gear and the hardcore match. That is just classic.
He's so funny.
It seems, didn't we do a thing where he came out in the Anaheim Ducks gear?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah.
That's strictly from memory. I
think he was in Kansas City one time, and he came out in the Royals gear with the catching mask and with the. He had the full gear on. He had the pad. He had the knee pad. I'm like, what are you doing?
The hardcore match,
just screaming,
and that was when he was
time.
hardcore champion. So he's, the other guy's going to have chairs and baseball bats and God knows what, and barbed wire wrapped cactuses and stuff, and he's coming out, protected from head to toe. Yeah, it's just I think a really smart booking.
That's one thing about WCW hardcore matches that I actually really like, as opposed to WWE. With the exception of like Mick Foley matches and some of the stuff at the very early point, most WWE hardcore matches everything you see come out feels like a prop. With WCW, it actually feels like there's a thing over there, and it's there for some reason. I could use it. It feels more legit. Most WCW hardcore stuff feels more legit, even if it's not even a hardcore match. Even if they're like just having a regular match, and they spill out into the to the stage. Like I remember one of the Spring Stampedes, and they were just running each other into like the stage setup with the wagon and stuff. I love that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we talked about this before as we were going earlier in this conversation when Chris and Kevin at Bash 96 went into the women's bathroom in Baltimore. I don't think that was booked. I don't think that was planned, because when they went in there were women like screaming, running out of the stalls with Chris and Kevin beating the hell out of each other, into the mirror, into the sanitary napkin dispenser, no offense, and whatever the hell was going on, and women just screaming, running back out into the concourse. I don't think that was planned.
I bet those women remember that.
Oh, I'm sure. We probably had
do.
several pieces of litigation that originated from
Holy
that, my
shit.
guess. I don't know.
Oh.
But that's what you're talking about, David, is that when we would see hardcore matches,
Felt realer.
it wasn't ever like, oh, here they come. They've got 15 ladders out there. They've got 12 racks of chairs. Here we go. It was like the old, like the Tupelo concession stand brawl with Atsushi Onita and Ricky Morton and Eddie Gilbert and all those guys back in the early 80s, where they were like squirting mustard on each other and hitting each other with popcorn makers. It seemed real. It seemed they were just using
WCW
stuff
tried to
that was there.
recreate that in '95. I remember it uncensored between, I think it was the Nasty Boys and Harlem Heat. They did
Correct.
the whole thing. They did. It was like a Tupelo street fight.
I enjoyed that match. I know what you're talking about.
That was a good match.
You can call it what you, yeah. But here, one of the things, okay, in WWE, they'll put anything under the ring. It could be a fucking assault rifle, for God's sakes. It makes no sense for it to be there, but it will be there because it's booked in a match. In WCW, if it came from under the ring, it almost always made sense, like a fire extinguisher. It was, but most of the time they brought it from the back or the stage setup or somewhere else, somewhere where it actually made sense for it to have been there. That's one of the things I like about WCW's use of weaponry, if you will.
Yeah, it was more organic.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
true.
That's exactly right. I agree.
The one thing about this match, though, with Norman Smiley, though, is as I was rewatching it, Mike Tenay gives you a shout out, Scott, because I guess you coined the Norman Conquest submission that Norman Smiley was using.
Yeah.
So Tenay gave you a shout out that I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah, we were trying to come up with a name for whatever that thing was he did, which was some submission move, and I don't know. Maybe it was the liquor talking. I don't know, but I said Norman Conquest when we were in the post-production center there at CNN Center, and that kind of stuck.
How was it working with Tenay? Was it working with like a computer? Because you're just dealing with
he
somebody
was amazing. I in my best estimation of my own intelligence about this business, I have never learned as much in this business as Mike Tenay has forgotten. That man is a genius. He's a repository of information. So I miss him. I haven't talked to him in, holy cats, whenever we were in TNA last, 2005, I guess. Haven't talked to him since, almost 20 years. I wish I could hear from him and talk to him. And he came back to do the Hall of Fame thing in TNA. But I think that's the only time he's done anything. I stand to be corrected, but I'll tell you this. You guys know Conrad Thompson, right? Who does the Starrcade?
Yeah.
When we were doing those shows back in 2019, I guess, 2018, 2019, I did all of those shows with Conrad, who's incredible. and we go to Vegas, which is where Mike lives. And I remember telling my wife, who's sitting right over there, and my daughter, parenthetically, who decided that she would rather go to Vegas with me and Casey, my wife, to go to the show than go to her high school graduation. So she stiff-armed her high school graduation to go to Vegas to go to Starrcade, which was the right call. If you,
damn right,
assume all of you guys graduated high school, it was a complete bore fest.
Yeah, I would have rather went to Starrcade.
Most of my class sucked.
Same.
So screw them. I would have rather gone to something else.
So we go to Vegas, and I'm thinking like, oh, I'll finally get to see Tenay. It's been forever. And sure enough, that weekend, he goes to like Rhode Island for his daughter's wedding, which is a valid excuse or something. So when we all got there, all the WCW guys, Tony, Shivani, every piece of talent. I think Gene wasn't there. I can't remember who all was there, but a lot of Pinzer. We were all like, oh, we get to see Tenay. And, nope, he was gone and was gone the whole time. So we never got a chance to see him. I wish if he sees this, I miss you, Mike. Love to hang out. Come down to the lake. We'd love to have you. But I haven't seen him or talked to him even in 20 years. But he was a genius and a mentor to me.
He always seemed like somebody that just was a wealth of knowledge, but also someone that would be willing to teach anybody about any aspect of the industry that you wanted to find out.
Yeah, he didn't seem to hoard knowledge. He seemed like he would actually, if you didn't know it and you wanted to know and you wanted to listen, he would tell you. That's
correct.
How I always felt about him.
I think that's valid.
When he was that brief heel run, and I think wasn't he a heel in TNA for like 5 minutes?
Tim and Shivani were, yeah.
Yeah, that was like the one time I didn't think it made any sense.
Shivani's famous promo comes out there in the Hawaiian shirt. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And that's the one that got me into TNA. Because he made some crack about me, and they were like, yeah, Scott Hudson is
we'll bring him in.
Atlanta, Georgia, not doing anything.
So you send a card to Tony. You're like, hey, thanks.
yeah, send him $5 and hey, here's my number.
Call me maybe.
Yeah, that's a throwback. Wow.
Oh boy.
Hey, that thing was an earworm for like 6 months.
It was. So now we have next the television championship match between Conan and a guy named Chris Jericho. Never heard of him.
Yeah.
With Ralphus, by the way.
With Ralphus. Yes, Ralphus, who is massively over. Like,
somebody.
I was choked. Sorry.
Somebody told me that Ralphus had like a really bizarre pull. Like he could, not like Stacy Keibler type chicks, but like chicks, women that people actually caught him with. I heard a couple stories in a couple podcasts I was listening to. I think it might have been Schiavone or somebody. He was just talking about how they caught. No, it was Jericho himself. He was talking about how he caught Ralphus.
Yeah, it was Jericho. I remember that now.
Yeah.
Was it Bertha Faye or people like that?
Just the whole story was just bizarre.
I do remember that when Ralphus, Ralphus was like a truck driver, drove one of the crew trucks, and had been one of us forever. He was just, he wasn't Ralphus. He had a name. I can't remember his name. But then Chris came up with this whole this is why Jericho's a genius. You can say what you want about Jericho, but everything that guy touches turns to gold. From Ralphus all the way through a touch of the bubbly in AEW a couple of 3 years ago. Just the guy can think on his feet and make chicken salad out of chicken shit without even thinking about it. But he's the one that came up with the whole Ralphus thing and just picked the truck driver. And then he picked the one guy out of the crew to do this with that developed a bit of an ego. Ralphus,
Yeah.
you know, everybody else in the crew would have been, oh, I'm just honored to be here. I get a bonus check. Oh my God, I'm going to save this. I'm going to, take care of my kids. I'm going to buy a new house, where Ralphus is like, I'm going to need to restructure my contract. And I'm going to need Stacy Keebler's home email address or whatever the hell he was doing.
God.
But, this is why Jericho is a genius. If anybody, I will fight to the death anybody that ever badmouths Jericho. I love that guy. I think he's one of my top 10 favorite guys in the business ever, not only for his promo ability, his in-ring work, but just how smart to the business he was and is. The guy is just as close to perfection as you get.
I have a lot of favorite Jericho moments, don't get me wrong, but one of my favorites is he had been away from WWE for a while, and he comes back, and he's getting the babyface pop because it's the return, but he's supposed to be a heel. And so I don't know if it was Jericho's idea or somebody else's, but from what you say, it probably was Jericho's idea. He goes out there. He does that Tom Cruise thing where he's like, yeah. He doesn't say a word. He just goes, yeah, like Tom Cruise jumping on Oprah's couch shit. He just does that for like several minutes until the crowd finally gets pissed and starts booing him. And I always thought that was fucking brilliant. He turned him heel. He turned him heel on him without saying a word.
Yep. That's exactly right. And the whole thing about you just made the list. I mean, think about all those things. This isn't, not to knock WWE creative. They're smart guys. They know what they're doing. They couldn't always hit for Jericho and miss on so many other things. That was all Jericho. He's so smart. And anyway, I don't want to get bogged down into some kind of Chris Jericho fanboy conversation. We got to talk about Conan.
Maybe we should do a show about Jericho sometime.
I'd be fine by me. I got no problem with Jericho at all. It's wonderful.
Down the line roundtable.
Wasn't he finishing up at this point? I think this was his probably last real big show I could remember before he departed for WWF.
Yeah, this is one of those before the Radicals. No, he wasn't even part of that. Yeah, this was before he came in because he had the time off before the Y2J thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
if I got my timelines right, I think this is December 98. I think he shows up August 99 on Raw in the middle of a Rock promo. I think I've got my time right.
July.
It was a Rock promo.
Yeah.
It was in the middle of the Rock promo when the number actually hit 0. And then Jericho does his stick, and the Rock goes, "Who the blue hell are you?"
You're right. Okay.
Which no one talks about the Rock going, "Who the blue hell are you?" to Jericho, but they talk about him doing it to Booker T. And I've always thought that is odd because he did it to both of them, but no one says anything about the fact he did it to Jericho.
Yeah. Well, you got to think about it with Jericho. Within 3 years of this, he was facing Conan for the TV title for WCW. Within 3 years, he would be the undisputed WWF and WCW champion, defeating The Rock and Steve Austin in the same night to do so.
Yep.
I don't. Well, it just shows how if the stars align and you can just really ride to the top, and everything worked out really well for him. But I tell you what, one of my favorite things about Jericho and WCW was I think it was the same year. He became the Cruiserweight champion and lost it on that pay-per-view. And then the next pay-per-view, he was the Cruiserweight champion again and lost it again. It was like 3 pay-per-views in a row. He lost it, but he kept bouncing back like a fucking Energizer Bunny.
Yep.
Honestly, his whole Cruiserweight title run is probably one of my favorite title runs in wrestling history. There's like 4 titles. Sorry.
I'll tell you a quick Jericho story. Back in 96, I'm doing Saturday night, or maybe it was 97. Whenever I started doing Saturday night, Chris was on the show like every week. He hadn't been elevated to that next level. and he was a heel, obviously, and he was an asshole heel. And my mother, one of the worst human beings ever to exist, but she did watch the show. And
Damn.
so she's watching Saturday night because I'm on, and she calls me later in the week, like Tuesday, Wednesday, and she said, I watched the show Saturday night, and she said, I don't know what to make of this Jericho guy. I said, yeah, what about him? She goes, I think he needs to go to prayer meeting. Now, you guys are out there wherever you are, but I'm from deep, deep South Georgia, and prayer meeting is the Wednesday night church service. You have church on Sunday morning, Sunday evening, and just in case something had started to wear off in the early part of the week, you went back to church on Wednesday night for prayer meeting before you came back to church on Sunday. So she said that Chris needed to go to prayer meeting. So on the next show that Chris was on, I said, my mother, I guess it was Legend or maybe Tanae or Dream. I said, my mom called me last week, Legend, and said that we need to get Chris Jericho into prayer meeting, that he's having a hard time. He needs some redirection. He needs to be in prayer meeting. So the next TV taping was at the Georgia Mountain Center in Gainesville, and we're backstage, and Chris comes up to me out of nowhere and doesn't say, hey, Scott, nothing. He just comes up and grabs me and says, where does your mother want to send me? So I had to go through this whole South Georgia Baptist church. Okay, Chris, look, there's services on Sunday morning at 8:30 and at 11. And I did this whole drill to explain to Chris what prayer meeting was, because he had pissed my mother off so bad that she wanted to make him go to church on Wednesday night.
You mentioned Legend, so I have to ask, because you're obviously talking about Mr. Zbyszko.
Oh, sure, yeah.
How was it working with Larry? I've met him once, and he is an absolute trip. Like,
he's perfect. He's wonderful. I'll tell you this story. Back in the early 2000s, when my parents had passed away and got inheritance from them, and thankfully didn't need the money, and so I took the money and bought a cabin up in the North Georgia mountains, right? Big, nice 3-story on the water, and it was gorgeous, still is. And didn't get up there enough, but Legend knew that I had the cabin. I talked about it nonstop. And he calls me one day and says, I think he had sold his house or something. His deal was up with WCW. He didn't have any other thing to come in, so he sold his house and needed a place to stay, and said, hey, can I go stay at your cabin? I want to write my book. I said, sure, I don't care. So I met him, gave him the keys to my cabin, and he went up there and lived in my cabin for like 3 months and wrote his book, hanging out in the hot tub, out on the deck up in the mountains. And his book that he wrote, which was, I think, called Adventures in Larryland.
Yes. Yeah. Adventures in Larryland.
He wrote in longhand in spiral bound composition books, and I still have them, and he gave them to me, and I keyed them all in. I typed them up, and then sent them to his publisher. But while he's there, when he finally, he's checked out and he moves to Florida, I go up, and my neighbor from across the street, which is still 100 yards away, says, there was some guy staying at your cabin. Yeah, it was a friend of mine living up here writing a book. And he goes, he stayed in his underwear almost the whole time, that he would walk out onto the deck in like his wrestling tights and get in the hot tub and whatever. And my neighbor was like, I don't know who this guy is. I said, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Thanks, but everything's fine.
He's Larry's the best. He can wear what he wants.
That's right. I didn't say that because I'm sure he'd be like, who? But
one of the biggest heels in the history of the industry.
I'd love
just an absolute angel of a guy.
Yeah.
And despite what you would think from watching the show, without question, in the discussion, if not in first place, of the funniest people I've ever met in the business.
Oh, I believe
Just
it.
not even close. Insanely funny. Hung out with my wife and my daughter before. He's just wonderful. Just a great guy. Love him to death.
I'm glad. I'm glad I'm hearing like all this stuff about people that I've always kind of thought were good people. Like I'm glad that you're not coming with, and because I never wanted to hear that Larry Zabisco was an asshole. I never wanted to hear things like I never wanted to hear things like Larry's a jerk, Mike's a jerk, Heenan and Mean Gene were pricks. Like I never wanted to hear that.
No.
And the funny part is tonight, and I also have to say this is, and I didn't say it earlier, and I probably should have. You have said nothing but good things about Chris Jericho, Dave Meltzer, Vince Russo, Eric Bischoff, and Disco Inferno.
Yeah.
Where there's 5 personalities right now in the wrestling medium and the wrestling social media landscape and the communities itself that have just really kind of vilified those guys.
Yeah,
completely.
they've honestly gone too far with vilifying a lot of them.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially it's like I listened to some of the Bischoff shows, and his take on AEW is really, really simple. He says, "Look, this is what you're doing wrong. This is what I did wrong. Learn from my mistakes. Please don't do what I did." Oh, and this part is really, really good, but that's not what they. But that's not what they parrot. The AEW hardcore fans get on Twitter and says, "Oh, he hates AEW. He's taking WWE money. He just wants them to die." It's like nobody listens.
No, no one does, and that's the hard part. And it's really, I just don't get why it's just always, oh, Eric's a hater, or if you say anything negative about AEW, you're a hater. When it's just like, I'm not saying anything negative. All I'm saying is that I'm telling you the truth, and you just don't want to hear the truth.
I heard Bischoff say that Tony Storm is one of the absolute best things in AEW, but nobody parroted him saying that. And he's right. She is one of the best things about AEW.
He's 100% right. And it's just, there's some things that Russo says that he's right about. There's some things that Disco Inferno says that he's right about. I find Disco to be hilarious with him at Conan's podcast, to be quite honest. And Scott, you can also tell Glenn anytime you want that if he wants to come on this show, we're happy to have him.
He's an educated. He's a University of Georgia grad. I mean, he's a smart guy.
Yeah, we'll treat him like a pro. We won't do like what some assholes would probably do to him if they had him.
I think if you tell him you just tell him, just say, the host really thinks that WCW would have turned business around if they made you world champion. He would definitely come on the show. He'd be like, all right.
No. He would lose your number. He'd block you.
He'd be like, what is wrong with this guy? Come on. He's thinking out of his mind. So the next match is the big kind of, I think, grudge match of the evening. You got to have Ric Flair on the Starrcade card.
Flair and Bischoff?
Flair and Bischoff.
Yep.
This thing had so much built up into it for the previous 3 months when Flair had come back on December 14th of 1998. I remember that date because that was literally one of the loudest reactions I've ever heard from a building in my life. When he came out and made his triumphant return and reformed the Four Horsemen and coined the phrase, fire me, I'm already fired.
I'm already fired.
Fire me, I'm already fired. And this is also starting the time where, because if you remember earlier in the year, if you saw Eric Bischoff had the long hair. He did not, and he looked young. He looked like a true villain. Where now it's December of 98, and we are seeing Eric Bischoff starting to stress a little bit. The stress is starting to kind of seep in. And now he also not only has to deal with the stress that is going on within WCW, which is a vastly changing culture, he also has to play a tough villain in itself against Ric Flair. And Flair is one of the most beloved baby faces right now in WCW.
Oh, yeah.
And it's, again, blurring the line of, oh, hello, kitty.
Yeah. Well, she wouldn't stop messing with my feet, so I brought her up for a few minutes.
Oh, what's the name?
Halloween. My daughter named her.
Oh, perfect.
Miss Halloween technically is on her vet record, but we just call her Halloween.
That's adorable.
Anyway.
So
she's ready to go back now.
Flair now and Bischoff are facing off in perhaps the most personal of matches of 1998. Other than Austin and McMahon, but Austin McMahon still are in the form of kayfabe, where you look at Flair and Bischoff. This probably was the most intense rivalry of 1998. Scott,
there's real heat there, if I recall correctly.
Scott, you were there. Were you at the meeting, the supposed meeting that Eric said what he said about Flair? Well, there were two meetings, actually. The first one was where he had, I think, Hogan and Piper set up and said, nobody else except these two guys have drawn any money in this industry.
Any money, yeah.
Or the second meeting of where Bischoff went on the record and said that he was going to bankrupt Ric Flair.
I didn't hear the second one. I don't know if I've ever heard that one. I was at the meeting for the first one. But that second one I didn't hear at all. But I do know that and again, this was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
More, 26 years ago. I don't know if they've buried the hatchet since, but I know at the time that there was legit no working at all heat between these two.
How the hell did they manage to have a match?
Well, they're professionals. That's what you would hear. They would say this is professional wrestling. When you walk through the curtains, it's a show. When you get behind the curtains, when you get back to Gorilla, get somebody between them because they hate each other. But I'm assuming they've long since buried the hatchet.
I think they have.
I hope so, because I love both those guys to death. But this was one of those where it felt like they were working the boys, even though there was legit heat between the two for legit reasons. I mean, it wasn't something there was something else going on. It was exactly what you thought. What was all the contract stuff? It was what, what had happened to Flair to send him home. God, was it the first part of the year or just after?
April, I think it was. Flair's side of the story is they wanted him to reform the Horsemen on a random episode of Thunder, and Flair was with Reed for a national title tournament in, I think, Minnesota, and they were going to do a private jet to fly Flair the next day. And I think they said, well, you're going to have to pick up half the tab. And Flair was just like, I'm not coming. And
I remember that. That's correct.
Then Eric, I guess, started litigation or executed he's in breach of contract.
Yeah, that's true. I remember that. I assume it's true. That's correct. They just didn't like each other. But they did keep it together to have the match. And then you had Kurt come out at the finish, which helped get them to a finish. But this match was, and I respect Rick as a wrestler, as a performer, certainly as a promo, as much as anybody in the business. But this was about as good as you were going to get, considering that they both had to survive and be alive and uninjured when the final bell rang.
Why do you think there was a breakdown in their relationship? Because when Bischoff took over power in 93, he relied heavily on the Flair legacy.
Sure.
Flair had just come back from the WWF from that year and a half off, from that year and a half up there, and Bischoff had taken over. Bill Watts had just been fired or released, whatever.
Good.
Whatever they tell us, that's the one story. It's like, if Bill Watts will tell you I quit, everybody else will tell him he was fired.
Right. You can't fire me, I quit.
Exactly. Where Bischoff used Flair's legacy and influence, I think you go back to Starrcade 93, which was just 5 years earlier, and he put the world title on and beating Vader. And then that also turned into the next 6 months where they get Hogan. Right. And then things start to turn around, and then business really starts going. Where did the fracture of the relationship start? Do you think it was Flair getting pissed off because I got you, Hogan? I helped bridge this relationship to get Hogan there. And I also got you started because if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have been able to be in the position to get Hogan. And also the company wouldn't have been in the shape we're in because I've been pretty much the flag bearer now for you in your early days.
A little from column A, a little from column B, a little from column C. I think you're right on all of that. And the issue at the end of that equation is ego, in that Flair saw the writing on the wall. Hogan, this is 98. Hogan's already been in for 4.5 years. The NWO was already, has already crested
course.
Yeah. But I mean, it's already been the biggest thing in the world. Flair has been relegated to, at best, second tier under the NWO during that run. And now they want to reform the Horsemen. Flair's nothing if not a self-promoter, which is why he got to where he was in the first place. And Eric understood that he had to be the man in charge. And Gordon Soley used to call it back in the 70s, the irresistible force and the immovable object. You had two entities that were not going to budge each other. They were not going to compromise. They weren't going to give. And Eric needed Rick and Rick needed Eric, and they hated each other. And that dynamic was just never going to work. So was there a moment? Maybe it was when the thing about the private plane, to go see Reed at his tournament back then. Maybe that was the inflection point. I don't know. I honestly don't know. But it was never going to work. If it hadn't been that, it would have been something else.
Yeah,
with those two. Because
usually with most people, when they have a big explosion, you can look at it and say, well, this is what caused that explosion. But in reality, in most cases, it's been building to that. There's been all sorts of little things that has led to that point. And it's just the thing that actually caused the big explosion is normally just the happenstance of the moment.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. Like I said, if Eric had just completely backed off and said, okay, we'll send a plane for you and bring you back, there would have been something, a month later that would have pissed one or both of them off.
Well, the thing about that kind of always rubbed me the wrong way about it was there were a lot of other guys in that company that no-showed events and did not give any notice and got away with nothing. Flair, they tried to talk to him, and Flair didn't just no-show. He flat him just said, I'm not coming. It wasn't a no-show. It wasn't a no-call, no-show. It was literally, I'm not coming. I can't. I'm family obligation. I don't understand why Eric almost felt like he needed to make an example out of perhaps the biggest and most successful star of that brand pre-Hogan.
Let me ask you this. You're right, and here's the analogy. If Disco had been on the pre-show against Kid Cash, a fantastic match.
Yes.
but it wasn't on the pay-per-view. It was something for the house to get them back in their seats, and it would have kept them interested. But Disco had called and said, I can't come. I've got to go to my kids' wrestling tournament. Would Eric have done this to Disco? No, he would have plugged somebody else into that spot. But he had to make an example of Flair because of where Flair was positioned in the hierarchy of talent. And that's why. It doesn't make it right. And as much as I love Eric, and I do, this was just an ego. And Eric might tell you, I don't know, I haven't talked to him about it, but Eric might tell you that's one of those that he wishes he could have back. You know, that's a guy. I know there's a lot of things that he did that I've heard him interviewed and talked to him. I wish I had that one back.
What about this theory? And what about this theory? This idea? Tell me if I'm right or wrong, or if I'm even far off or whatnot. You've got so many big names in WCW pulling creative control, saying, I won't do this, I won't do that, I won't be here, I won't do here. And so, and Eric's pulled 9 ways from Sunday, dealing with all these big personalities who are pulling their weight, trying to not doing what Eric needs them to do. So when Ric Flair has the thing with his kids' tournament, his wrestling tournament, it's like the straw that broke the camel back, and he needs to do something to Flair because all these other sons of bitches, well, all these other guys aren't doing their thing, and I need to prove my point as a boss.
That's a great point. In that, what Flair did. I mean, I don't know if you guys are all parents, but if something's happening with your kid, you're going to do what you can at your job. Saying, hey, I need Friday afternoon off or Wednesday morning off. My kid's got a thing. 99.9 times out of 100, your boss will say, sure, have fun, go nuts, see you when you get back. It's not a big thing. But with this one, it may have been, the ego. And this wasn't that doesn't work for me, brother. This was this doesn't work for me, brother, but for a completely legitimate reason. But maybe Eric didn't see that. He goes, this is somebody trying to usurp or undercut my authority. I'm not having it. Whether it was this doesn't work for me, brother, or my kid's got a thing and it's important to me.
I will admit
that's a guess. I don't know.
No, it's a great guess, but also I will say that this was a very well done angle. I thought that they did the whole 3 months that they've done with this on TV, including the match and then what happens the next night on Nitro. They really did a great job, I thought, with it in building interest. Flair at this point is still in his prime, and he's turning 50 come February, and is still, I think, perhaps one of the most well-regarded in-ring performers, but also his promos around this time were electric. Like, his promo work in 98, 99 were absolutely outstanding, especially the first couple months of 99 when, especially, I think the first one after the Finger Poke of Doom, where he pretty much talks about legacy. It was really kind of talks about the history of the industry and the history of WCW and the NWA. Really kind of
where we get a lot of
spine-chilling stuff. Yep.
Briscoes.
Yep.
Wahoo McDaniels.
Yep.
All that stuff.
Dory Funk Jr.
He's like taking
Harley
his
Race.
Off. Yeah, and
Jack Briscoe. Ric Flair. Like, it's just...
I really think, as an on-screen character, I think Eric Bischoff is kind of undersold as a villain.
He's underrated.
He's underrated. Okay. It's like he's not just like a villain boss, but he's not like Vince McMahon. Most villain bosses in wrestling are pretty much adopting the Vince McMahon approach. But Eric Bischoff, my view, at least my opinion, is that he understands that wouldn't really work for Bischoff. Bischoff is physically smaller. Because Vince McMahon, if you ever noticed, most of us have, the man's fucking jacked. He's bigger than some of the wrestlers today. Okay? But Eric Bischoff, he takes a whole different approach. I've noticed. He's almost like a smiling Satan. Especially when he was the I'm not as a character. I like Bischoff, but I'm talking about as a character. He's playing like a smiling Satan, especially as when he was running Raw, and I think that's what makes him so. He's good and compelling, but he's also different because instead of being Vince, he's this, and it's great. And I think it's way underrated.
I think that's a valid point, David, and I'll tell you why. Number one, Vince, I don't think was acting, and Eric most definitely was.
Fuck no. No.
Vince was living vicariously. That's not acting.
He was not acting.
No,
There's
he
no
wasn't.
way.
Yeah.
The lawsuits have proven it. He is not acting.
And Eric is a great guy and a great boss and easy to work for and terribly nice to talk to if you've ever talked to him. He was acting. He was not the asshole, heel, villain leader of the cult of the NWO or
Perfect.
whatever was going on. He was playing a character. Vince, I think, was just the red light's on. Who's in my way? Who do I have to step on?
Actually, the red light hasn't been on. You've just been doing this. Fuck him.
I remember when he fired Lita from Raw, and she's like in the middle of the ring, and she's crying, and he's on his hands and knees with a mic in his hand, and he goes, "Fired, fired, 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 fired." It's so hilarious.
Why in the hell would you have Jim Ross kiss his bare ass in Oklahoma City or Tulsa or wherever it was?
Not unless you're a prick. No, Bischoff.
I'm going to draw
Bischoff's
money.
the best Raw GM. I don't get me wrong. I loved him in WCW, but Bischoff was the best Raw or SmackDown. Well, he's the best general manager WWE ever ran. Ever. He was supposed to only be there for like 1 year, allegedly, but he ended up being there for like 3, 4, while SmackDown was constantly rotating until they landed on Teddy Long. Yeah. Because Bischoff was just a great damn character. And yeah.
Teddy Long was a great character, too. I don't want to hijack the conversation, but Teddy was great, too.
Holla,
yes,
holla.
he was.
The Undertaker.
My fiance actually watched the Who Killed WCW documentary with me for programming we were doing on this. And she knew who Eric Bischoff was. She saw Eric Bischoff quite a bit, like as a character. But when she actually saw the documentary and she got to know who Eric Bischoff was, like off screen, she really started to like him. Like she really was just like, he's just a really good and decent guy. I said, yeah, that's Eric. I said, I've met Eric in passing once. It was a
envious.
Well, it was. I didn't really get a chance to talk to him, but it was Bruce Pritchard and Eric Bischoff. They did a co-show for. Ed Conrad was the moderator. It was kind of like a co-show for. It was at a casino. It was right before AEW got started, and also it was like the week that Bruce got the call to go back to WWE. So it was like the last time that he did like a live show, and it was before COVID too. So this is 5 years ago now.
Yeah, the glory days.
Yeah, but meeting Eric was fun, but it was only for like 3 seconds. I got my picture with both of them, but it was still, Eric's one of those guys I'd love to be able to sit here and talk to 3 hours, pretty much just about everything under the sun, because there are a lot of questions that I do have.
Daniel, let me say this,
yes,
if I may. We talked in the earlier show about my shoot job. Not going to go into it. But I ended up being the boss of a big deal in the federal government, in federal criminal courts for about 7 years. I was in charge. So I had to see what it was like from the corner office managing a staff of about 110, 120 of the most hardworking, well-educated people in the world, and even that posed its challenges. But I can tell you that with no offense to anyone that I worked for in the federal government, when you factor in everything, especially the challenges and the type of personnel that you have to manage, I'm 60 years old, so my entire 40-year professional career I have never had a better boss than Eric Bischoff.
I believe that.
He was the best.
I believe that 100%. I believe that.
Yeah, when you listen to Eric Bischoff on his podcast, he doesn't come off like the smiling Satan character who was on TV. He comes off like a guy you'd like to have a beer with.
Yeah.
Oh,
He really does.
Yeah,
He sit down, share a beer, talk some good stories. That just seems like Eric.
Me and him could just shit on AEW for 2 hours, and I think he'd have a blast.
He wasn't doing. I'd love to get him on the. I'd love to get him on this show.
He's been doing a lot. He's been making the rounds.
I tell you what, Eric Bischoff is probably making more money off of AEW than AEW is making off of AEW.
It's so true.
It is.
And I love it. I hope that's the case. I hope when it looks at it, Bischoff doesn't want him to go out of business because he's just like, oh God, I'm running out of stuff. So we got 2 matches left. Second to last match, Diamond Dallas Page against the Giant, which I believe
he's about out. He
is out the door. Like I think he officially gets booted out of NWO Hollywood the next night, but this is it. He is pretty much going to be the big show within 6 weeks of this.
I want to see if he did sold out real quick. I'm curious.
I don't think he was sold out. I think he was done after this. I think
you're right.
Yeah,
you're probably right, but I'm gonna double check.
But this was, but also another great diamond cutter by DDP off the
Very
brilliant
Done gun ladder match.
Every time now with Diamond Dallas Page,
nope, you're right. This is the last one.
Yep, I feel like with DDP, every time that you see him out there now, it's just like his stuff just ages better and better. Like every DDP match now, he seems to be. 1998, he was kind of working a style that we're kind of seeing now. I think we've been seeing in the last 5 or 10 years.
I think DDP was WCW's last real chance to get the train back on the track, and I think this is when he became. And I think this happened in '99. At that point, WCW probably didn't have much of a chance at being number one. But if they had not turned the man heel and they just let Diamond Dallas Page be what he's best at, I think they could have stabilized.
I'm glad you said that because I was thinking the same thing. All I can think of is Tenay, just People's Champion.
He's the People's Champion. It's like we're going to turn him heel. Why?
Yeah.
Because somebody didn't work for that brother. I don't know.
God, of course, because Hogan had to turn babyface at the beginning of the year, so he's just like, well, just DDP's.
And that was such a baby turn. Hogan's baby turn in '99 is so fucking forced. Where it happened organically in 2002, that's what Hogan wanted, but he had to wait another 3 years to get it.
Yeah.
Well, he was trying to change. He was trying to be babyface in early '99 too, when he was a heel. Like that, the Wolfpack was a heel especially after 2, where, the finger poke of doom happens, and yet here's Hogan, and he's trying to get a babyface response. It's like, no, you're the heel, dummy.
You just did the dumb shit like 3 weeks ago, dude. Stop.
Yeah. God, but yeah, no, I thought that this was another DDP great performance with the Diamond Cutter. Like, God. He really was.
The top rope Diamond Cutter. I remember
he was just trying to hit every angle he could. He was just. I think he was just back there with a compass and like a.
He's just trying to get the best that he can out of any given situation. And I will say this: like, I know we're not talking about that show. Maybe another day, but the best Goldberg match there ever was, and I do have high opinions of a few matches actually, for the record. But the best Goldberg match is the one with him and Diamond Dallas Page.
I agree.
Don't get me wrong. I thought the Triple H match with Goldberg was pretty good too. But this DDP and Goldberg is the best you're going to get.
Yep.
Yep. Absolutely.
And speaking of Goldberg.
Hey, what's your take on the Big Show match? What's your take on the Giant and DDP, Scott?
I don't disagree with anything you guys said. There's only so much you can do. At the beginning of the booking of this match, they knew that Giant was gone. There's just they didn't want to kill him because that would take away from Page's victory, but they knew that Page was going over, and I think they got about as much out of this match as they could reasonably expect. Giant didn't come out of this with any heat or momentum, but he didn't get killed, because if Page had come in and just jobbed the guy out, it wouldn't have meant much. He might as well have wrestled, the gambler.
Well, the audience would have believed it. Suspension of disbelief.
The gambler.
But so they had to give the Giant something. I think they laid this out. It wasn't the greatest match. These two, I think, were capable of so much more, but it wasn't ever going to be booked to be the best Page Giant match. It was going to be booked to be the best match to get Page over and push Giant out the door.
Right.
And for that, it was exactly right.
Because Page is what, champion?
At the time, too.
Actually,
Giant.
Page is champion like 6 months or 4 or 5 months after this, I think. WCW champ. Am I right?
Yeah, he would be champion
Close enough. Yeah.
April of 99. But
Yeah.
you think about it, we fast forward a year, the Giant is WWF champion. He is
Right.
WWF champion come December of 99. And two, getting dragged around a funeral by Big Boss Man.
Big Boss Man. Oh my God.
His dad's casket.
One
Big
of
Boss
the
Man
best,
is driving the
best
Bluesmobile.
vignettes ever. That's one of those that if I'm bored on like a Sunday afternoon and it's not football season, I'll just dial up old angles, and that's one that's always on the list.
He's
That
wearing
is
leather fucking pants at his dad's funeral.
Insanely
Like,
perfect.
are you fucking kidding me? Like, that's the biggest faux pas of the whole thing. He's wearing leather pants at his dad's funeral. Come on! Like, you got to think of the wardrobe on that. But
That one, and when Vince was in the hospital and Austin was the doctor,
I'll take it from here, nurse.
bedpan. I'll take it from here, nurse.
I can hear
That's
that.
a good impression.
Bam.
I can hear
That
that
is-
bedpan sound 800
Oh,
times.
my God.
I'm never
Oh,
get
yeah.
sick of it. He
That was
just
probably
tested
one
it
of the-
all day.
Greatest segment ever.
I know we talked about Jericho earlier, but the what guilty pleasure for me is when Jericho had the feud with the Cruiserweight division and unmasking everybody in the Lucha Libre
Right.
because somebody attacked him and he had to try to figure out who it was. That is one of my guilty pleasures. I'm sorry.
Jericho Goes to Washington is still also up there for me. When he's just going around DC because he's trying to get
Yes.
he's going around, he's talking to conspiracy theories people, and he's just like, so Malenko was dressed up as this guy, but he wasn't exactly in the match.
I love
But he
that
was-
feud, by the way, with him
Yeah,
and Malenko. The
that is a
1,001
great feud.
holes, the 1,002 holes.
Actually, I was in the
1,003 holes.
I was at the Centrum, Slamboree 98. I was in the building the night that Malenko took the mask off when he won the Battle Royal, and that building went absolutely
yeah.
nuts
Yep.
when he took the mask off. It was one of the loudest pops I've ever heard in my life for a live show. And everybody
yeah.
was just going absolutely crazy when Malenko was just kicking the shit out of Jericho.
Jericho
Oh,
brought
it
the
was
best
so
out of
good.
Malenko in that whole feud.
He did.
He brought a part of Malenko that I didn't know was there.
did.
I didn't think about Malenko beyond his ability to wrestle in the ring. But then with the whole feud with Jericho, oh my God, it's like there is so much more to Malenko than I ever knew.
You're
And
100% right.
Jericho brought that.
You know, the most controversial thing I still think in my lifetime that I've ever seen was in 1997 when Pro Wrestling Illustrated named Dean Malenko the #1 wrestler in the world.
They fired several people in PWW or PWI for that.
I still could not believe that when that got
He
released.
deserved to be a
I'm
high
like,
ranking, but
Really?
logically,
one?
No, I'm not saying not number one.
Not
Let me
that
continue.
Yeah.
I mean, he's in WCW. He's been a cruiserweight champion. He deserves to hit high on the list. Yes, but number one should have probably been one of three people. Most likely, number one should have been Hulk Hogan, followed by Bret Hart and The Undertaker, because
Yes.
PWI bases it on championships and main events. And by those qualifications, those are your 1, 2, and 3 should be Hogan, Brett, and Taker.
Did Scott, did you hear anything backstage of Hogan yelling at Malenko, being like, "Should have been me, brother. Should have been me."
No, I did not.
Throws the world title at him. What the fuck is this? What the fuck is this, dude?
You're assuming Hogan looks at PWI. No offense, PWI. He probably had Jimmy Hart and Brutus Beefcake looking at the magazines and giving him the old Howard Finkel monthly or weekly report on what the magazines would say.
When he burned that Wrestling Observer newsletter in '95, it was probably the first time he'd even touched one of
this,
those.
brother.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like, hey, they just handed that to Hogan. It could have been anything. It could have been like a bunch of poems, and he wouldn't have known because that wasn't his thing.
My favorite PWI picture, though, for
Written by the
awards
genius.
ever was Hogan holding up his most hated wrestler of the year 1996 award with all the ballots with his name on it and kissing the award. That's still one of my like, it was so perfect. Like, Hogan was a
good heel.
He was such a hammy, like such a ham for those first 2 years of just, you didn't really boo him, you just kind of loved to hate him type deal.
Yeah.
And then as time went on and you started realizing what was going on, you're like, all right, fuck this guy. But
it's literally, Hogan is the literal evidence. Hogan is the literal evidence of why it would have been better to keep kayfabe. Because if nobody knew what Hogan was in the back, it would have then people would have been able to enjoy Hogan more. But the more they learned about what Hogan was, the less they could like him. And that just proves like keeping kayfabe was important right there.
I can tell you, guys, like after Bash '96, when the NWO formed and all of that went down, and Nitro night after night ended with 18,000 people throwing everything they had in their hands and everything they could find into the ring. There's nothing like that. Like
that's
the
like murder heat.
Yeah, you can't buy that, and being there to experience it, whatever you think it was a million times better. Especially, I've been a fan since 1970. To be there, and you literally got chill bumps just seeing that kind of heat from the crowd directed at those guys, and all they would do was just stand there, and Scott would do the thing, and it was just incredible. For the rest of my life, if I never get to do another wrestling show, the fact that I got to experience that from ringside, or at least from Gorilla, just to see it happen was amazing.
It's millions of WCW fans collectively saying, "Those motherfuckers."
Well, right. I think that's why it worked, because it was 3 guys from New York coming in and taking over the Southern belt kind of.
Yeah, but which side was he on? No.
Exactly.
And what nobody, I never hear anybody say is Kevin Nash is from Tennessee, Scott Hall is from Central Florida, and Hogan's from Augusta, Georgia.
Yeah.
And they're thinking like, oh, these are New York guys. Like, no, these are Georgia Championship, Florida Championship, Mid-Atlantic guys from what they watched.
Hogan got his start in what was it? CWA? Continental, that's Southern.
Continental.
He broke in Florida.
He was in Florida too.
Matsuda broke his leg like 3 months in.
And then
in the training.
Scott Hall been in WCW before as the Diamond Stud, I think. Yeah. And there was Oz, of course.
Big Scott Hall in AWA.
Vinny Vegas.
And then he was Scott Gator Hall, like hunting alligators. Nobody remembers that bit in WCW.
That was when he was doing the Tom Selleck look instead of the whole
Tom Selleck
Master Blaster.
Yeah.
Oz.
Vinny Vegas, which is actually the best one of the old ones.
And the thing is, that's why the attention span of professional wrestling fans is something that Eric parlayed to his advantage. like nobody thought these were New York guys,
Right.
except everybody. You know, they weren't New York. They were, you know, Hogan did 15 years in or 10 years in Southern Territories. Scott and Kevin were in WCW like 4 years prior to this.
Yep.
But nobody remembered. And now all of a sudden they're New York guys coming down. I just thought that was such brilliant booking to use the WWE's booking against them to get those guys over, and then to have hundreds of pounds of bullshit raining down into the ring, flying over our heads, over the ropes into the ring, just from the heat that these guys are getting when they couldn't get heat again in a pottery kiln 4 years before.
Where were you? Were you there the night that Hogan turned?
In '96 at Bash, I was there, but I was backstage. I was not doing the show.
But right. But you were in the building. Do you?
Yeah.
But so, what was the vibe?
Yeah.
Before and after? Because before, the rumor is Hogan didn't get there until literally 90 seconds before.
Well, he didn't check in with me, so I don't know. But none of us knew what was going to happen. I can tell you that. You know, I didn't get a format. I was just there we were doing something on, God, like Prodigy or CompuServe or something.
I remember CompuServe. CompuServe is CompuServe, I think, was the one that you guys had the deal with.
We were doing something with them. That was my role. And so I didn't have a format. We were just reacting. And again, it wasn't audio. It wasn't this. It was typing of what we were seeing. So they're not going to give us a format. You know, we're basically doing like Misty 3K of what we see.
What did it feel like as it happened?
Oh God, it was incredible. And we knew what we were seeing. We knew we were seeing the biggest baby face of the previous 10 years or better, 12 years, turn heel. And it wasn't like Nikita Koloff turning heel or turning babyface. This was the standard bearer, the face of the sport that we loved, that had been with presidents and on the Love Boat and on Johnny Carson, and had been, again, the face of the sport, turning heel. And it just hadn't been done before. Not that turns hadn't been done, but somebody at that level, Bruno, never turned heel.
Nope.
You know, that it was at that level times 10, because he had even though we knew he had been heel with Blassie, and had worked Hogan on the undercard of Zbyszko Sammartino at Shea Stadium. We knew all that, but he had been a babyface, the number one babyface in the business for so long. We knew what we were seeing, that the business had evolved, the exposure of the business had evolved, and we knew this was a sea change, an earthquake, to coin a phrase, of a moment in the business.
Did you expect?
And we got to see it in real time because we didn't.
It was like a
coming.
nuke.
It literally, it felt like it. It really did, because it was. Because I remember I was in junior high, and I remember no one was talking about wrestling before that summer. No one.
Yeah.
Not a damn person. Come
Like
that
now.
end of August, the beginning of September, it was, holy shit, are you watching Nitro? Like, who's showing up next? And then people are coming to me because they're thinking I got insight, and I'm just like, I have no idea. I have no idea what's happening right now. My hero just turned on the entire world 6 weeks ago, and you're expecting me to sit here and have answers for you. I have none. I'm having 13 years old and having just like a midlife crisis, having to tell everybody, you don't get it. You don't get it right now. I am lost. I don't know where anything is. Up is down, down is up.
You know who really took it in the ass for that one? Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels, though, he took it bad because when he became the champion after WrestleMania, and the ratings for WWE went up. They shot all the way up to a 4. King of the Ring 96 was one of the best drawn pay-per-views they'd ever had. And then lo and behold, they're in the Bush Leagues. Hulk Hogan just turned heel, and Shawn Michaels' ratings cut in half.
Yeah.
SummerSlam did less numbers than King of the Ring.
Yeah.
In fact, that SummerSlam 96 is the worst SummerSlam buy rate before the WWE Network. And then the house shows fell off. I know that from what Cornette said on the kayfabe commentaries. They collapsed. The ratings went from 4s to 2s. They couldn't sell a show to save their ass. God knows how cheap those tickets at Royal Rumble 97 had to be to fill that arena, even with the hometown hero.
I heard average price was like $12
Pretty
for
fucking cheap.
the Alamo Dome because they needed to fill that for
Vince's
and
ego
obviously
filing.
the comp numbers were ridiculous too.
But nobody out. I mean, WWF as a whole took it on the chin, but nobody took it. No big name in the industry, to be specific, took it harder than Shawn Michaels because he's the one who got to be on the other side of the coin, looking like the biggest failure with a dick in his hand. With what am I going to do? I'm fucked. We're screwed.
I think it definitely took a number on his mental health because
I think it
really
drove him
did.
off the edge.
Like I look at that, and he lost
his smile. And I don't mean to make a joke.
It was
He
not
lost
his
his
fault
smile.
either because every single match that he had that year was fucking
great.
fantastic.
HBK versus Mankind, fantastic. The 2 Sid matches, great. Vader match, never mind. The second Bulldog match at King of the Ring itself was great.
Diesel?
Bret Hart, great. Diesel, that's the best Kevin Nash match, in my opinion, at least. Owen Hart on that top when he came on top of that fucking house.
Yep.
All that was he had a great year in the ring for the most part. But
no one gave a shit.
But I think that drove him down a spiral, and I think he about killed himself a couple years later just because of how bad 96 went for him.
Yeah. And, it also led to everything and all the animosity that him and Brett would have because they put the belt back on Brett, and Brett is sitting there like, well, Brett kind of also was just like, oh, he's just going to implode as champion. It's just like, no, he's holding it down. It's just the other product has just got caught
Extenuating
hot.
circumstances is what it was.
Like,
he wouldn't have imploded if WCW just did not do the Hogan thing, and if Hogan just came in as a face and attacked Nash and Hall, they probably would have got a minor bump, and then it would have been business as usual, and then Shawn would have kept those 4 ratings, or at least 3s. He'd have been fine.
What Shawn should have realized, and far be it for me to give Shawn Michaels advice about the wrestling business. I'm not that egotistical, but what Shawn should have realized is that the NWO, the forming of the NWO and that angle taking off like a rocket ship, the only reason the WWF did as well as it did was him.
I agree there.
I mean, if you had,
I agree.
God forbid,
Tatanka.
Bob Backlund or somebody like Tatanka, as champion, it would have sank and maybe died. Shawn Michaels is in the discussion of the best wrestlers of all time, and he's the reason that it stayed afloat, not the reason that it cratered. It was going to crater no matter who was on top.
If Brett was champion, they would have done the same
thing.
thing. If Brett was champion, the numbers would have went down. If The Undertaker was champion, the numbers would have went down.
If they even went with Austin, it wouldn't have worked.
Austin was
'96.
ready. Austin was ready.
I know. But
Austin was still a year and a half, I think, to go. But no, by summer '96, there was nobody in the WWF roster or anybody in that company, regardless, that they could have gone out and gotten that could have competed with the New World Order. It was literally impossible. Considering the fact that the NWO, we are in 2024, and the NWO was still one of the most popular sellers of merchandise for WWE.
They make top 10, sometimes top 5.
Not this year, surprisingly, but that's because the product's hot. But there were times in some lean years that it was like the 1 and 2 position for merchandise sellers was Stone Cold Steve Austin and the NWO.
I remember that 2019 merch was something like it was Steve Austin on top,
Yep.
NWO, Becky Lynch, and then The Rock.
Yeah.
And then then after that it was a hodgepodge. Like briefly it was Alexa Bliss, and then it was like this, it was like that.
Yeah, it was that hard. It was that some lean years there where they're still having to, but it also shows the strength of how iconic the NWO is in the sense of, and concerning the fact also I'm wearing an NWO hoodie right now, so I almost knew it was like.
In the meantime, back to where NWO is about to go over the top and fuck everything.
Well,
up.
at least the Wolfpack is.
Yeah,
we have reached
Kevin Nash,
the main event of the evening. Goldberg, Kevin Nash, streak, and the WCW Championship on the line for Bill Goldberg. Kevin Nash comes into this after winning World War III and also defeating Mortis, who was starting to get a big push around this time as well. He was on a pretty decent streak, and they fed him to Kevin Nash in under like 7 minutes, leading into this matchup against Goldberg. This is one of those, this is a lot closer as far as popularity as I think a lot of people kind of, because everybody kind of sits there with this match and says, well, Goldberg was super popular and they beat him in the end of the streak. But I look at it and I say, Nash is pretty damn popular in this match too. Like, it is kind of 50-50
it's a little bit
50-50,
but no. Quick question real quick. Could you imagine what would you do if the Undertaker streak with Brock Lesnar ended with Scott Hall randomly coming out with a taser?
Oh, Christ.
A stick taser like a WCW.
Oh, God. I don't know how that, like, I
think somebody would have got shot.
Scott, I have a question.
Yeah.
So, when it comes to the perception of this match, and considering the fact of who's involved in it, claims have been made that Kevin Nash was not booking at this time. Kevin has said that he did not take over as booker until February of 99. This is December of 98. Do you think Kevin Nash had any real creative influence into this? Was he booking at this point? Or was the narrative of this was Eric's decision and they decided to go with that?
First, to lay the foundation, Kevin Nash is really, really smart. I know Kevin is not a lawyer by education, but he should pursue that career.
He could be.
Because if somebody says, Kevin, were you booking WCW for Starrcade 98? He can probably say, no, I wasn't. Eric was booking for Starrcade 98. If you say, Kevin, who booked the finish for you and Goldberg at Starrcade 98, it'll probably be no comment. Because I guarantee you Kevin did not book Norman Smiley and Prince Iaukea. But Kevin can say with a straight face, I wasn't booking WCW for Starrcade 98, and still this match with Goldberg is definitely the finish, could have come straight from his head, and he wouldn't be lying either way. That's a guess. I don't know that. That's not inside information. That's not hot news. That's just a guess.
The match is not horrible. The match is not horrible up until the end there.
And it was a good match.
It's not even a bad, not even the worst swerve in the world, because you could have easily, okay, how it turned out is one thing, but what you could have done, okay, going back to Steve Austin as an example, when he lost the title to Kane at King of the Ring and then won it back on Raw. What if Goldberg challenged Kevin Nash to another match on Nitro and won it on Nitro the next night? I know that's the whole booking towards the Nitro show instead, but maybe that would have fixed the issue, broken the streak without breaking Goldberg, because I think they kind of broke Goldberg a little bit. What do you think?
I think that's a perfect point. I can't imagine, with all due respect to Kevin, who I love to death, I don't know what good comes out of this finish, of ending the streak, with Scott bringing that stun stick or whatever the hell it was into the ring to get the, to kill Goldberg. And then the next night's the finger poke of doom, right?
No.
No,
it's
that's
8 days
January.
later.
Okay, so it's all right. So, but it's
later.
close enough.
Yeah.
That's where we were headed.
Great plan.
I don't know what good comes out of this. You can make the case that Goldberg fighting from underneath and fighting to get the title back is the better position for him, and no streak is ever going to go forever. But what the WWE did with Taker's streak ending was the right way to do it. You can make the case that it shouldn't have been Brock, it shouldn't have been at that Mania, whatever. But it was booked right.
They built how many WrestleManias off? They sold how many WrestleManias off that one streak? The Undertaker?
Yes.
Yeah.
God,
And so
think about it in terms of years. How many years did they get business off of that streak? We got
holy shit.
173-0, which was a complete work. That, by the way, was a Mike Tenay creation. I don't know that Goldberg ever did lose.
Damn Tenay.
But he did not win 173 matches in a row. I don't know that he wrestled 173 matches for WCW. In fact, I'm sure he didn't.
They would have had, if it even happened at all, they would have been counting house shows. It's the only way it could have even been done.
If you ask Bret Hart, though, he kicked him in the head 173 times.
That's true. Oh, my gosh.
I hate to say that because I love Bret, but I just need to throw it in there.
Yeah,
Bret's the wrestler that I'd want to meet the most.
The thing was, that was something Mike made up on one of the shows, and it may have been a Nitro, that he was undefeated. And then every week, if you go back and you want to do like a graduate school research paper on how did you learn that pro wrestling is a work, one Monday night, Mike is saying that Goldberg's streak is at 84, and the next Monday night, his streak is at like 103. Like he's wrestled like 19 times in 7 days, and he's wrestled 0 times in 7 days.
I'll give Sid Vicious credit, because when he came out with the Millennium Man guy, I think gimmick a year later, it was like the numbers would change in the middle of the night. He'd be like, I'm 175-0. Hour later, 185-0. It's like,
I fucking love Sid. And God rest his soul. He wasn't that long ago he passed away. But Sid was awesome. Right. And that's one case. I know I've shit on the WWE edits for the themes off and on throughout this show, but the WWE edit for Sid Vicious's 2000 theme is really awesome. They actually did that well. It's like, it was like, oh my God, they got like one thing right out of a million. I know y'all looking at me like whatever.
I haven't heard it. Maybe this is one of those where we should go find Scott Steiner and have him do the math. Like, how many matches in a row did Goldberg really win? And he would probably come up with something.
I would just like to listen to how to explain it, especially if he was. Yeah, I don't care if he was right or wrong. I just want to hear him say it. Maybe he'll put Buddha's ass in the hospital again.
I mean, here's the thing I look at with Goldberg, because you're right, Scott. I think with that night, I don't think he ever really recovered. I don't think he really recovered from this night.
In the last 6 or 7 years, he has, but in the WCW run, I agree.
Okay. Sometimes in wrestling, in all promotions, they'll do something, they'll book somebody a certain way, and then there's a way they could go about it, and there's a way they go about it instead. And I think this, in the case of Goldberg, he obviously got the raw end of the deal at Starrcade 98. Even if it was a story that everybody was fine with, his character lost. That was bad. It wasn't like they needed to have him wrestle the next 3 months, being not featured as a top player. I mean, there was a lot of points after that where they could have presented him as the main event star still, but I felt like that they had actually dropped him down. It's like, why? Like the next my what I'm saying is, why couldn't they have just continued to feature him as a main event guy? But I felt like they dropped him down to like upper mid card for a few matches. I think they were like sidelining him for Kevin Nash's run. Does that make sense? Yeah.
They did.
But
No,
I've
they
seen
did.
that a
Exactly what
lot.
they did.
I've seen that a lot where somebody, the best example of this is Kofi Kingston. He's the fucking world champion. He gets beaten by Brock Lesnar. Next thing you know, he's back to mid card or less, like he was never even champion.
Well,
It's
now
like
he's
just-
a top heel of the company, so.
Well, yeah, right now at this exact moment, but like for 5-6 years, I mean, when you just ask yourself a question, screen out all the Royal Rumbles and ask me how many WWE pay-per-views has Kofi Kingston been in since he lost that title? If you just eliminate the Rumbles, hardly any.
Hardly any, you're right.
Yeah, you don't just because somebody lost big on the big show, you don't have to book them like they're a bitch. And that's what I think happens. Goldberg obviously wasn't treated as a bitch per se, but he was definitely less favored than other people, and they didn't have to go that way. And if they still treated him as the number one star in the company, I think the Starrcade finish wouldn't have been such a bad deal.
You know, at this point, we're about a year away.
Sorry about the rambling, by the way.
That's all right. From Russo coming in. It's less than a year, I think, before Vince
About
came
9
in.
months, give or take.
Yeah, 9 or 10 months, yeah.
And he got a lot of heat for saying this as Booker, and that was I'm not going to do my Vince impression. I haven't worked on it, so. But bro, the WCW title is just a prop.
Ugh.
And remember that? What better example than this that they did at Starrcade 98 to exemplify that? And Russo's nowhere in town. He's nowhere close to WCW. And they treated the WCW title as a prop. It's as much of a prop as Scott's stun stick on Goldberg, especially a week and a day later, where they do the finger poke of doom. The finger's a prop. It's all a prop. So when Russo gets there and says it's a prop, people give him heat. What the hell are they doing here? It's a prop, and it doesn't mean anything anymore. And I'm not justifying that. That sucks. But that's what they were doing.
I've always thought that they could have recovered from the finger poke of doom had the last shot of Nitro been Goldberg just thrashing everybody. I thought the problem at the end of the finger poke of doom is when Lex Luger turns on him, and then they started spray painting him and they started beating him down. Because then it's like, now you've gone too far. Yes,
they're treating him like a bitch.
Yeah, you can have moments of the heel overtaking things and people are pissed, but then you can have that cathartic moment of the big good guy coming in, kicking everybody's ass, and that's the last shot. Everybody's going home happy. It's not when then you just degrade the guy in front of his hometown. After 6 months earlier, you sell the house out at over 40,000 people. One of the biggest moments in Nitro's history, or the biggest moment in Nitro's history. And then within 6 months, you piss it away.
And Hogan, of all people, would know this, because if you go back to his pay-per-view history, there were several times where he lost. And like the first Survivor Series, he got counted out because, you can't just put somebody over. He got counted out. Andre the Giant is the sole survivor. Hogan comes in with the title, kicks his ass out. Hogan must pose. The hero still looks good. The hero wins without winning, and it works, and the crowd loved it. I less so because I liked Andre and I kind of thought he got a raw deal, but that's just me. The fucking audience loved it, and that's what mattered.
Here's the thing about booking that a lot of folks that haven't ever done it or been in the creative process tend to lose sight of, and that is you can have. I won't use Starrcade '98 as an example because it doesn't work, but you can have a show that has an opening match that's hotter than hell. Maybe like this show that we're talking about. First two matches, Kidman, Eddie, Uvi, Ray, those are wonderful. Those are incredible matches. And then just go to absolute shit and then have a main event that is lights out and match of the year quality. People are going to think that was one of the best shows they've ever seen.
There's a couple WrestleManias that are like that.
They are.
Correct. Because of how they left the building or how they turned off their television or their streaming service or their monitor. Even though the show itself was terrible, it started hot and it ended with heat. They'll think that show was good. When you do the inverse, when you start a show hot, have mid matches in the mid card, and then a main event that is absolute death, people are going to think that's one of the worst shows I've ever seen.
True.
And that's what WCW started doing.
Yeah,
WCW, honestly,
I agree.
WCW's strength as a wrestling promotion was always their mid-card matches were amazing, but their weakness more often than not was their main events not
Main
living
event
up.
booking.
Right.
Sometimes it did. A lot of times it did not.
Perfect example. We look at 98, but we have to go back and we have to move forward. 97, fuck finish between Sting and Hulk Hogan. 98, the fuck finish between Kevin Nash and Goldberg. 99, the recreation of the Montreal Screwjob between Goldberg and Bret Hart involving Roddy Piper as the referee.
Russo, you son of a... Oh.
And then the next night, that would lead to the reformation again of the NWO.
WO 2000.
Yes.
You know my favorite things ever when it comes to like the criticism of the NWO? If you listen to the WWE's bullshit-ass documentary called The Rise and the Fall of WCW, several WWE people criticize the NWO for adding all these people to it and diluting it. But I think about the time in 2002 when the NWO came to WWE, and what did they do? They added the Big Show, which is fair enough, I guess. They added X-Pac, Booker T, and it looked like they were going to add Shawn Michaels, but somebody went and tore a quad. It's like they added like 4 or 5 people in the course of like 6 weeks. Then they have the nuts to release a documentary and criticize WCW for doing the same thing that they did when they had it.
Winners get to write the history.
Yep.
Oh, I know. That damn documentary.
History is written by the winners. And, I think...
Except for the Heyman one. Heyman's The Rise and Fall of ECW is the losers, but that documentary is actually good because Heyman writes it.
Yeah, it was a Heyman show. Yeah,
It was a Heyman production. But you look at WCW's history and people look at kind of why did WCW go out of business? Why is WCW not in existence anymore?
Time Warner, maybe.
And then you can look at it also. Their biggest show, their WrestleMania, so to speak, 3 consecutive years where the main event does not have a conclusive finish.
Yeah. I don't even remember the
consecutive
Starrcade. I don't even remember this
years.
Starrcade 2000 finish.
I don't even remember either. But like this, I don't even remember Starrcade 2000 to be quite honest.
You remember how Starrcade 2000 ended, Scott? You're the best.
I do not.
Of the four of us, you were the best shot.
Yeah, he was on the call.
Oh, let me see.
Yeah.
God, I'm looking at it now. Hang on.
Hold on, I'll look it up.
I know it was Scott Steiner because I think Scott Steiner was world champion. I think it was Scott Steiner and Sid.
It was.
Okay.
Scott Steiner won.
Raw bone beat your ass match.
Yeah.
I forgot it.
By
I know the match they had at
submission.
Halloween Havoc was.
Yeah, that's
I
what it
remember that one. That
says.
was a bloody
Yeah.
mess.
Yeah. But that was
I loved it. Don't get me wrong.
but 3 years in a row. 98 having to be the kind of, if this is an Oreo, it would be the frosting, I guess, of a shit sandwich of what? 3 consecutive finishes in a row of the main event, and it's not conclusive.
And how different would people have viewed how different would people view this show if Scott Hall comes out with the taser, Goldberg snatches it from him, shocks Scott Hall's ass, and then takes out Kevin Nash with a spear and wins, and you just changed 2 minutes of a whole show? How different would people view this whole show just because of 2 minutes that are different? Going back to what Scott said earlier about ending a show hot.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would have cared. If it was the other way around, nobody would have cared. They would have loved it.
Yeah, they would have been great.
The
They were
people
like, yeah.
still popped though when Nash won the title.
Yeah, they did.
Like it
In
wasn't.
all
like,
fairness,
But they were touring the whole match.
they were.
maybe they should have saved Nash winning a title off of someone that people actually hated.
Right.
You know what?
And it was a good match. I mean,
It
the
was.
people are going to
It
pop for the
was,
finish
yeah.
of a good match. If it had been some kind of dregs and then they get to that finish, they would have shit all over it.
Yeah, you ever hear that? You ever hear the? I know you have. This is more of a rhetorical. Have you ever heard? But you know what? But you ever hear the time when like a match sucks so hard that when it's over, the audience pops, but it's like a thank God it's over pop. Like,
Yeah.
oh, thank God.
Surprisingly, this match also went over 11 minutes because I love hearing Nash go
The
be like,
longer
well, you
than
know,
his
Goldberg
entire
can
run
go
the last
past
time he
7
was
or 8
up in a-
minutes.
So
That's-
he wrestled more minutes. He wrestled more minutes in that one show than he wrestled in his last WWE run.
Combined.
Oh, man.
The
Yeah.
entire match.
Actually, in all fairness, the Goldberg Roman Reigns match was actually pretty good in Saudi Arabia. Enjoyable, good. Not like Bret Hart good, just enjoyable.
I thought Goldberg, Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, the one they did in Orlando was really
The one
good.
that worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one that worked.
The one that
Yeah.
worked. The one they did in Orlando that was awesome. Because it was like 4 minutes and all they did was like signature moves. It was fantastic.
And I think it was one of the first times I went to the barricade. Well, not the first time I went to the barricade, but the way they do it now.
The way they do it now. Yeah.
Because I remember Big Show putting people through the barricade before on Raw, but they did it different then.
One of my favorite moments of that match was Brock hit him with like the Germans, the rolling German suplexes. And then Brock is just like, yeah. And then while he was doing that, Goldberg just drills him with a fucking spear.
Hey, is that the match where one of them gets hit by the padded chair thrown by the other, or is that a Braun Strowman match?
I think it was a Braun Strowman match.
That was a Strowman match.
That spot is in my head. I just
Strowman does that. Yeah, that's Strowman's deal.
Yeah. I remember that being funny as shit.
Scott,
Yes.
to kind of close this out, what was the backstage atmosphere after the proceedings, I guess you could say, of this? Like, what was everybody's kind of reaction? We all just like, what the fuck did we just witness? What just happened?
Of everything that happened in that main event, what everybody was talking about backstage was the end of the streak. It wasn't the title change. It wasn't where do we go. It was like, holy shit, we had something here to help us
Something organic.
survive the denouement of the NWO, and that was Goldberg ascendancy and his streak, and now that's over.
You fucked it up.
Exactly. That, now what? He starts a second streak. That's not going to be nearly as over as the
He did
first
start
one.
a second streak.
Yeah, he did, and then
Yeah.
it didn't work. And when we knew that we can't do a second streak's not going to work, and then the bad part was like well, at least there won't be anything like a finger poke of doom or anything. We didn't say that, but it can't get worse, and it did.
They jinxed it.
I think Robert Fuller, Cornette talks about it. He's just like, somebody had said that to Jerry Jarrett once. Jerry Jarrett looked at him and says, well, it can't get any worse. He's just like, oh, it can. Like,
It did.
And I think, God, I could just see being backstage, just looking around and being like, someone be like, well, I guess it can't get any worse, right? And I'd be like, oh, it can. 8 days later.
Hey, Scott.
I do remember that we didn't know the finish. We didn't know the streak was going to.
So you got as surprised as we were.
Yeah. I mean, usually when we would have the production meetings, we would get the finish of everything, especially if it was some kind of complicated Eddie Graham 4-minute finish.
Yeah.
But that one we didn't. It was like, and then we've got Kevin and Goldberg in the main event. Okay, when the match is over, and that was it. We didn't get a finish. We didn't know who was going to be out there.
That sounds
or
sus.
or what.
That sounds.
They may not have known.
They do that now.
Fair enough.
They still do that now, though, too. So it's just
But
They may have
for us
figured
back
out
then,
still.
that wasn't the norm.
no. Well, did they do that for Starrcade '97 too? Where you're just like, so
That one I can't remember. I wouldn't have. I would not have been anywhere close to a room or seen a format for that show. I think I was still doing, something on the internet
copy
back
serve
then.
But it this I can only imagine being there, because I think a part of me would be, especially if I was working for WCW, I don't know if I would be able to kind of sit there and just look at that and say, yeah, this is going to be great. Like, woohoo.
No, I don't think anybody did that.
Because outwardly, I think I would probably go to Eric and I'd just be like, the fuck did we just do? Like,
I was
what
not
is
in
this?
a position to do that.
Like, what did we just do? Like, it's because did Kevin really need to beat Eric Goldberg? No,
He
really
he's
didn't.
hot as a face. They should have had him beat a heel champion.
It's just he didn't need to do it, because he didn't need the belt. He didn't. Like, he's already a top star. He's already selling as much merch as everybody else.
And later on,
here is my thought on my position in the company at the time, and I'll defer to this. Gene Simmons came to WCW, the headquarters out on Log Cabin in Smyrna, when we were doing the demon character and all of that. And I'm a massive Kiss mark, the biggest in town. Still am to this day. And I met him, and I'm sorry?
So they're a great band. Fair enough.
Oh, yeah. I love Kiss still. And so I'm meeting Gene and getting to know him, and we're walking around and walking through the power plant. And he just said, hey, tell me something. I said, what's up? And he said, when is the demon going to actually win a match? And I said, hey, I'm just in sales. And that's exactly how I looked at my role. I was given the product to sell, and I did the best I could to sell it. If I could do anything to improve the creation or content of the product, they would have asked me, or I would have offered it. I was just in sales. I was on the mic or on the laptop or on a keyboard trying to make people want to buy Skittles or whatever the hell.
Or Surge.
Surge. Crystal Pepsi.
I remember WCW Mayhem. That was a video game that they had released where Surge was literally like advertised all over it was the first game that had backstage like areas. And I remember you'd go and all of a sudden you just see a massive billboard for Surge. You're like, oh, okay. I see how this
they paid for that.
Yeah. Exactly. We are rapidly approaching. Well, at least it is past midnight here on the East Coast. And I don't want
Hey,
to keep...
hold on real quick. I wanted to say something to Scott. I was thinking
Sure.
real quick.
Okay.
I wanted to say this as a fan of WCW, that if in the last few months of WCW, when obviously time was running out, I have come to admire the way the way the boys really worked those last few months. They, as a company, I would say that company died with its working boots on, because those guys were trying the best they could with a situation that pretty much was out of their hands. That they were just trying to make the best out of what was most people could pretty much tell was the end. And as a fan, I really admire those wrestlers in the last few months of that company, and everybody who worked with that, everybody who was working it, such as yourself, all of them, who really were putting their effort to try to just do anything and hope it works. Because you guys, I mean, obviously WCW went away, but you guys died with your working boots on, and you guys, in my opinion, went out like wrestling heroes. That is
thank
what I
you.
want to say to you.
Well, thank you very much. And you, if you go back and look at the final Nitro and the final 3 or 4 Nitros in the last pay-per-view, who were the wrestlers and announcers and other talent on those shows? That's the ones that stuck it out and, you know, did the travel and stayed in shape and worked out and did their homework and kept notes and showed up for rehearsal and did pre-tapes and production meetings. That's what we were doing up until that night in Panama City Beach. Whoever you saw on those shows, that's the people that deserve that accolade. And I'm humbled.
You guys were real. You guys, yes.
Yeah, you got. I felt bad for a lot of you guys on the production side of things, just because of the fact of that you were making a lot of sacrifices with the travel, a lot of sacrifices with just probably at moments with your sanity because of some of the things you guys had to deal with.
Sure.
And it always amazed me though, Scott, especially with you, of just how you were able to just, because with Tony Schiavone, I could tell by his tone, it's just like, I can't wait to this fucking thing just but with you, it was, you at least made it sound like that this was still the place to be. And I always respected that. You always made it seem like it was still it was 96. It was 97. And that was always something that I always kind of appreciated, because you kind of needed that person. And I think Schiavone, and I'm not knocking Tony either, because I can understand the position that he was in at that point, because it's just, you came back. He already admitted that if he had to do it over again, he probably would have stayed in WWF in 89, 90. But surprisingly, you could definitely tell with him, his tone was just like, I can't wait. I just can't wait.
You got the vibe that he was just waiting for it to end.
Yeah. And I felt like for Scott, though, he just was like, every week to him was just important. Like, and that as a fan, I appreciated. Like, you really, to back up what Dave was saying, you really did put your heart out in your sleeve as far as the last few months with that company is concerned. Like, and I could tell, and I think a lot of the wrestling audience could tell as well.
Well, thank you, Daniel. That was, you know, again, it says professional wrestling out on the marquee, as the cliche goes. And I had a job to do, and the checks didn't bounce, and I was gonna leave it at the announce table every time, every Monday night, every Sunday night, every Tuesday, whatever the hell we were doing. And that was what they were paying me to do. They weren't paying me to, you know, have an attitude on the air or to phone it in because we were going out of business. They were paying me to put the show over, and that's what I did.
Do you ever tell Tony to just be like, Tony, I work global at fucking Sportatorium. Sit down and shut the fuck up.
Never came up. No.
I work the goddamn sportatorium. I don't want to hear. Oh my God! Shut up. Place the dump. God.
Oh, I can't say that I ever said that. I'm one of life's regrets, I guess.
Oh, well.
Just one time, you just snap on him. You're just like, shut up. Actually, you know what? I never asked about Mark Madden. How was it working with Mr. Madden?
Oh, terrific! I know that he gets a lot of heat.
No, he gets a lot of heat.
But
Are you another? Are you? Is he another guy that you like that nobody else does?
I guess because I'd known Mark for before he came to WCW. I'd known him for 15, 16 years because we both came from the newsletters.
Right.
And I had known him forever. So I didn't have to get used to him. I knew him. He was like a friend and somebody that I'd hung out with and talked to. And, it wasn't like, who is this guy coming in? What's his attitude? What's his problem? I knew him. And I never understood the heat because he was exactly the way on the air as he was out there. Just a lot of fun to hang out with. Again, when we went out to Vegas, I told you about my daughter skipping her graduation.
Right.
He was out there, Mark. And so Mark and my wife and I went out to dinner one night, and I can't remember the name of the steakhouse, but it was just one of these where they bring it out to you and, just a crazy expensive steakhouse out in Vegas. I wish I could remember the name of it, but we had a blast. And she and Casey, my wife, was like, hey, he's nothing like he is on television. I'm like, no, he's exactly like he is. He's just fun and gregarious. He's just not a jerk. He's just a lot of fun to hang out with. And I had no problem with Mark at all. Still don't. Talk to him every now and then. He's great.
Oh, that's
yeah.
good.
We fans sometimes forget that people like Mark Madden had a role to play on TV too, a character, if you will. I know not everybody likes the phrase character, but I think we need to sometimes remember that.
I like Madden.
The thing about Mark, and I've told him this, and he's probably tired of hearing about it from me. The best Mark Madden line of all time. Now, we may have talked about this the first time I was on the show, Daniel. If we did, I apologize. But when we did that Team Canada thing in WCW with Mike Awesome and Elix Skipper and Lance Storm, and Major Guns was their flag bearer. Right?
Major Guns.
There's some flag bearer.
So they come out, and Jim Duggan was in there for some reason.
Dugan.
For a bit,
Jim
as
Dugan.
part of Team Canada. Yeah. And so they come out, and Tylene, who's a sweetheart and, just beautiful woman, incredible little shape. She just looks like a $1 billion. She's coming out carrying the Canadian flag and not leaving a lot to the imagination. Let's just put it that way. And Mark, when they're showing her walking around the ring, and she was actually walking toward us, and the cameraman, who was, I guarantee you, Jackie Crockett, was shooting her, and we're seeing it on the monitor, and Mark says, here comes Major Gunn wearing the ceremonial caribou hoof. Not camel toe, but caribou hoof. And I think there was dead silence from us for 15 seconds, which is an eternity on broadcast television. But I don't remember ever laughing so hard without making a sound in my life than when Mark said that Tylene was wearing her caribou hoof. Because I immediately got the reference. Because I'm thinking the exact same thing, they're not going to let that air. And he said caribou hoof, and I just went apoplectic.
Did that make air?
Well, yeah. I mean, it was a live show. I mean, it wouldn't have made thunder. I can promise you that. But
I gotta find out if this is on the network. I gotta find.
I guarantee you, it's not.
Yeah, networks. Ever since the network went to Peacock, they scrubbed the shit out of it.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't show a whole lot of, bra and panties, mud matches.
Oh, they ain't cut those out. Those are still on there.
Oh God.
Hopefully that's that Armageddon '99 pool party.
But they cut out like
You know
all
what?
the black. They cut out all the blackface. Roddy Piper's half blackface. The Rock's concerts, which pissed me off to no end because those are great. Though they did leave in his line about the crowd booing the cops, and he goes, "Don't boo the cops; they're your cops." I love that.
But if you got a free weekend, pardon me, just go find that whole Team Canada run, and it's like WCW booking is like the weather in Georgia. If you don't like it, stick around for 20 minutes; it'll change. So the Team Canada, angle probably lasted 3 or 4 weeks. So just take you 3 or 4 shows to watch, and maybe you'll find the caribou hoof line from Mark.
Then WWF, they pulled him. Then Lance Storm went to WWF, and they had him in another Canadian faction and another Canadian faction. Jesus Christ, I get it. He's Canadian.
The Un-Americans, yes.
Oh yeah, fucking from 2001 to 2005, every damn year,
La Resistance.
they had a foreign heel gimmick. Like Vince, we get it, and you can't blame all the other writers because it was a revolving door from 2001 to 2005. It was Vince going, "I want some foreigners, god damn it." And Lance Storm was part of half of it.
Lance Storm, another underrated talent.
Oh,
another guy that just doesn't get enough credit.
And that's one of those things that Russo got right.
He did.
In a big way, is that Lance, and I love Lance, a fantastic athlete, good guy, but just almost as devoid of charisma as anybody in the business. And so that's what Russo played up. When Lance, who is an intelligent person and can cut a promo, and that's the first thing he says, if I could be serious for a moment.
And then WWF, they had Austin come out, and he was snoozing, going, boring during the last show. That fucking killed him.
Yeah.
I fucking hated that.
Because I'm from Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Yeah. Just play to the strengths of the talent. That's not hard to do.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well,
love Lance Storm. He's awesome.
Yeah, Lance is the best. That was one of the final great things I think that WCW was doing was his booking. That especially that last year and a half, he was fantastic.
And don't forget, Starrcade 2000 had that Money in the Bank ladder match prototype. Years before they had Money in the Bank ladder match.
That's true, they did.
They did have that, and I made posts about it on the page about how they had that, and no one gives them the fucking credit. That's post-Russo, so I don't know who thought of it. Maybe Johnny Laurinaitis, but somebody is a genius for having come up with it.
It was probably either Laurinaitis or
probably Kevin Sullivan.
Yeah.
He was still in WCW at that point? It was like 2000, like December 2000?
Yeah, and Kevin was there until...
The end.
Close to the end, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, I think, gentlemen, we have exhausted all resources to talk about Starrcade 98.
It only took 3 hours of the man's life.
Yeah, I know. Also having to do this in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like 4 a.m.
I got to catch a bus at 6, so...
Oh, man, I'm sorry.
No, I don't. I'm kidding. Buses don't run out here.
Well, I want to thank Scott again for taking all the time in the world to come on to this program. You've now become a real good friend, which I truly appreciate, and I'm honored that you're on here again, being able to talk to us about your stories with World Championship Wrestling, and also just giving a world of insight on things that people still talk about fondly.
I'm serious about that Jericho roundtable idea. We could do that in a few months if you're down.
I mean, I can talk Jericho all night. He's wonderful. Don't ask me to go a whole lot into the artist formerly known as Prince Ikea. That'd be a short show.
Probably not the best roundtable idea there.
Nah, I don't think so.
No offense to Mike. He's wonderful, but
yes. But I want to thank Scott again for coming on. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving.
Yeah, we sure did. Thank you.
yeah.
Hope you did too.
Yeah, no, we did. I think everybody else did. Well, except poor Dave. He had issues.
I had E. coli on Thanksgiving.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
All that recalled chicken. The place I went to, they hadn't pulled the chicken yet.
Is that like the brand name that they have on the bag?
I don't
Like
know. It was a
Chicken
restaurant.
we didn't pull.
Yeah, it's like
Unpulled
like
chicken.
you go into Publix down south, the Publix grocery store, and they have like the BOGO section, the buy one get one, and there's like a bag that says recall chicken.
Oh, good God.
It's not even in a cooler.
Not even in a cooler.
No, it's just sitting out front with like the canned goods.
It was in
Chicken.
Massachusetts. It would be done by a store called Shaw's. Shaw's would be doing that.
The Star Market.
Star Market Shaw's.
Star Market.
Welcome to the Star Market Shaw's pregame for the Boston Red Sox here on the WEI Red Sox Radio Network. Sorry, I had to throw that in there. I gotta shit on my own region. I just have to. But Scott, thanks again for coming on.
Sure.
Have a great holiday with your family.
Same to you and yours.
Yeah, but we want to have you back again down the line, of course, to talk more shop. Definitely talk about some more shows. The Jericho idea is a good one. Yeah, we'll come up with some stuff down the line, I'm sure. But thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate it, and we all do.
My
here.
pleasure, guys. Thank you.
All right.
Merry Christmas. Happy
Thanks,
holidays.
Scott. Have a great holiday. Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, Scott. Thank you.